My name is Jennifer Pemberlow, and this video today is going to probably be quite long and encompass quite a few topics that may be triggering to some. So before I begin, I just wanted to let you know that this video may in fact be triggering. I don't know exactly how much detail, watching my dog, she's rolling around being cute. I don't know exactly how much detail I'm going to be getting into today, so I can't exactly, tell you what to be aware of for the trigger warning, but just be aware. So before I begin, a little bit about myself. So I am 36 years old. I have spent the majority of my life in New Jersey, with the exception of 2 years that I moved to Toronto, Ontario, where I attended a special effects, makeup, and animatronics school for 8 months, and then followed it by working at a salon and ended up on a television series called Band Photo, which aired on Ox TV, which at the time had just launched. It's a major music network. I do not know if the show aired nationally or just provincially, but at the time it was a pretty big deal at the time. At least, for those of us who were like in the music industry. Anyway, well, at the time, I'm not going to get into what I've been in since. Well, I will, but anyway, in 2000 and I'm going to jump around a bit, so I apologize if I do or go back and forth, and just want to give a little bit of background. In 2007, she'll say at the end of it. Hi, hello. In 2006, I had been in a very abusive relationship with someone who I had met when I was 9 and he was 17, and we kept in touch via email while he was deployed, and then later on, other things, and basically he had groomed me from childhood. And then when he moved back to the United States, even though he was still married to someone he had essentially been forced to marry because I guess whatever was going on, they thought he was going to continue living wherever he was. Anyway, he kind of we reconnected, we went out. The first night we went out, I actually had text messaged my mom and asked her to fake an emergency and demand that he bring me home, because what he did was had me leave my car at a gas station and then take me with him and essentially force me to watch him drink about 2 cases of beer. I think he had 12 beers at dinner. It was a lot. It was a lot of beer. And then a case at a friend's house. It was very uncomfortable. I was terrified and so shooken up and so triggered. I didn't know how to react. And I have to say, at that point, I had not been in a very healthy place emotionally, because prior to meeting him, I'm going to say about a month prior, I had just found out that the man who I had dated online for 2 years had actually been cheating on me and had a child with someone. Something that he didn't tell me until the child was about a year old, and I had visited him in the state where he lived, and it was his form of pillow talk. It was essentially, he didn't tell me because he wanted to have sex with me, and then after we had sex, he told me that he had a child, and the timing made it such that it meant he had been cheating on me, and it messed with my head so much that I was not making the best decisions. Not only that, but so my mom had, in fact, helped me get out of that situation, and this guy drove me home. But the next day, it was almost like, well, just try it again. Just try it again. And at that point, I went out with him again, and it was almost like I had no choice. Now he owned me. I was not allowed to say no. It took me a year to escape him, a full year. He forced me to move in with him. First he would ply me with alcohol. I was 20. In the United States, the legal drinking age is 21, and I was not ever a partier. I was actually the child that grew up with extremely conservative Christian parents whose main goal in life was to protect my virginity at all costs, and when that did not happen, it was to shame me and force me into abstinence before marriage courses and make me feel like I was a horrible individual for having had sex. I actually remember at one point, my dad made me watch this anti-abortion video where he then broke down in tears and started crying that they shouldn't have ever allowed me to go on birth control, and that he failed his job as a father. And I just remember sitting there at age 16, having only one sexual partner who had been my boyfriend for pretty much a year at that point, who I loved with all of my heart, and I didn't understand why my dad was, saying he failed as a parent, as if there weren't other important things in the world than protecting my virginity. Anyway, I had an 8 o'clock curfew until I was 18, at which point it turned to 10 p.m., which lasted until I was 20 when this ex forced me to move in with him. And when I say forced, I really truly mean that. It was he told me I didn't have a choice. And something that I had not disclosed to anyone really until the other day when I had to send an email to someone. Actually, a song came on the radio and it kind of triggered me. I can't listen to the song Jukebox Hero by Foreigner because of what this particular ex did while working as an MP at Guantanamo Bay, and how he had abused some of the prisoners there, and how that song actually went into play there. I cannot get into detail. It's not my place to. I also don't know all of the information, and I don't want to spread misinformation. But I think it is absolutely important to understand that. And also understand things like, at one point after I moved in, and I recognized the severity of the situation, and I wanted to leave, he started threatening me, and I remember standing on the balcony of our apartment, and just, essentially, it was like, if I threatened to leave, he was going to throw me off the balcony, sort of thing. And I will say, I know that he eventually did get married after he and I broke up, and to the best of my knowledge, she left after 3 days. Something happened where it was she needed to, the relationship was different once they got married, and she fled after 3 days. This man, anytime I would go to the bathroom, I've always had a habit of locking doors behind me. He would follow me everywhere. Anytime I would go to the bathroom, he would basically pick the lock and stand there and make sure I was well aware that I could never escape him. I was never safe. He would always find me. He would always break the locks. There was nothing I could do. He required that I give him all of my logins for my email accounts and my MySpace, so that he could use my accounts to stalk his exes and then monitor my activity. At one point, I actually had to make a secondary Gmail account because he was monitoring the first Gmail account, and I needed a safe way to send emails. Excuse me. So that was, I did not know he was a hateful, what he associated with. I didn't know until after I moved in with him. And at that point, I was just oh, no. And it needs to be known, the type of religiousness that my parents believe in. Basically, they don't see women, and I know they'll say that I'm incorrect here, but their actions in my life, and just in general, kind of speak otherwise. But at least specifically towards me as having legal rights, they don't see that. And I say that because both of my divorces, I was pretty much that I didn't. You're lucky that you're still on your ex, that you were even married to begin with. And it's just no, these people used me. Um, anyway, so I had escaped that, and right after that, my first husband, and I mean like, and anyone who I was working with at the time at the company that I was working at would likely remember the emails I was sending that were so, I was having full PTSD episodes in email. And there were a couple of guys, one of them ended up moving to Florida, another one, I think he still lives in Pennsylvania. They were aware of the situation. They had met him, he had come to the holiday party. But like they would remember that I was not in a healthy place. So about 2 weeks after that, my first husband had been stalking me as well as a bunch of other females in the area on MySpace. He had, I guess, just moved to the area like a year prior. He had been stalking a lot of us on MySpace and sent me a message and asked me to go out to a bar, at which point I said no, and I explained to him that I was not a drinker and that, my ex basically forced me to drink, and I ended up developing a high tolerance to alcohol as a survival skill, because there was like one occasion where I actually was forced to drink a bottle and a gallon jug of wine because he didn't want to play drinking games alone. It ended up becoming a survival skill to be able to drink myself sober so that if I had to flee, I could. Or if I had to be like the responsible adult and drive, I was completely sober and like, please do not try that at home. Not everybody, that is like a genetic thing, and I'm very, 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 very lucky that it's something that I was able to develop, but please do not attempt that ever. And if you yourself are in a situation where an alcoholic or an addict is forcing you to drink or do drugs with them, first off, I'm sending you the biggest hug. And secondly, there are ways to escape if you need it, and if you're not ready to, just know that when you're ready, there are ways to get out, because no one should force anyone to do something they don't want to do. Anyway, before I continue, I wanna let you know that my parents used to think I was a horny teenager. That is not true. Basically, when I was a child, I had just wanted to be held, but with families where there's an abuser in the family, or it's just not everybody likes to be hugged by certain people, and so I didn't have that from people home. So I just wanted to be held. It wasn't anything else. But I didn't have like I think I was like, I want to say boy-minded, not because I wanted it, but because my social skills were so bad. I relied almost solely on like early 90s copies of 17 magazine for social skills advice, and the majority of it had to do with how to get boys. That was not actually something that I wanted. I just thought that was normal human behavior. Same thing with a lot of the television shows and stuff. I just, as someone who is, non-binary, I don't see myself as either male or female. I'm more fluid, not man or woman, I'm female. I don't see myself as man or woman. I am female. I apologize about that. But like, it's very hard developing social skills, especially like I have health issues I'm not going to discuss because that will take up the whole thing. I don't want to do that. But anyway, so I was not like a horny teenager. I just was very confused with my social skills, because once people actually like projected sex onto me, it made me very uncomfortable and was not what I wanted. So there was like a disconnect in communication there, because I had very few friends. I had very limited social skills and not really the best support system. My parents tried, but the thing is, they are conservative Christians, and I have never been that. And that was the biggest problem, was that I was not the child they wanted. They wanted me to fit in this mold, and that was just not me. Anyway, so my ex basically, my first husband basically asked me out, and I said no. And I explained why. I don't, I'm not a drinker. I don't do drugs. I was the child who I could not even try to sneak out of my house because my mother's sleep apnea was so bad. The moment I opened my eyes, it was like she could hear my eyelids open, and she would start screaming, "Why are you up? What's wrong? Where are you going?" And I would essentially be like, "No, Mom, I'm going to the bathroom," or "No, I just need to get a drink. I'll be right back asleep." Like, there was no way I could even try to sneak out of the house. Not that I would. I wasn't invited out because I was, the one with the curfew and the responsible one, and the one people saw as a mother. So it's not like I would sneak out to go anywhere. I had to go to the bathroom. So my ex-husband asked me out. He waited. He sat and waited until my MySpace status went from in a relationship to single. And then it was just like, I said no. And then he asked me again. And it triggered me. It was just like I had just escaped this relationship where I was not allowed to say no. And here is this person I don't know who just not listening to my no and thinks that if you keep pressing. I did not want to say yes. I didn't think I had a choice. So we went on a date, and I remember when I saw him, and I was just like, I'm not really attracted to him, but he's not my ex, so I guess we'll see what happens. I'm not, that's not meant to be offensive. I was not attracted to him. I didn't really want to date him. Like, it's a weird thing to explain when someone leaves an abusive situation and then is targeted by someone when they're most vulnerable and, doesn't have the support they need because other people think they're a different person. Or other people, like, are going through other things, But my high school boyfriend had committed suicide. I was 16 years old. We had dated for a year. He was the person I lost my virginity to. He was basically the first person I had really, truly fallen in love with. He had taken his life. It was an intentional heroin overdose. It was his second attempt. His first attempt had landed him in rehab. I know his first attempt was 15 bags of heroin. Never needles, always snorted. I don't know how many bags it was the second time. Someone had said 27. It might have been more. It might have been less. I don't know. But he had taken his life, and I did not have the support that I needed to get through the grieving process. And it was like the moment he passed away, someone on one of the websites that I had been, involved with, immediately asked me to marry him. Immediately. And other, people just kept swooping in. And it should be known, the person who asked me to marry him is the person who ended up having the child, and then telling me, after I went to visit him, this was, a couple years later. Anyway. So I basically told my first husband that, I had planned to go to school for special effects makeup. I had planned to go to school in Toronto. And if you're going to be in my life, you need to understand that I'm moving. And so he proposed to me, after 3 months. And 2 months later, we got married. And I would have ended the relationship had my mom not insisted that I was not able to. She's like, no daughter of mine is going to be living with a man unmarried in another country. You need to marry him. And it was just if I had been given the opportunity to move myself and continue to date him and have him visit me as opposed to marry me, We would have broken up 3 weeks prior to the wedding date because he had been cheating on me. I also would still be living in Canada. I would not have had to file for bankruptcy because my first bankruptcy is nearly entirely because of meeting him, which I can actually prove because I had quit my job to work at Nordstrom at behest of him and his sister, who claimed I would make more money, which would be good for us when we would move to Canada. I did not make more money. I ended up having to, to get Nordstrom's employee discount, at least at the time, you had to open up a store credit card. So the credit card that had the majority of what I filed for bankruptcy on, I wouldn't have even had. And I didn't really have, I had some credit card debt when I met him, but I was, I had a good paying job. I just bought a car. I was working on, I was paying all of my bills on time, working on paying off my debt. I had 0% interest, so I could pay everything down right away. And it was just I came into his life or he came into my life and suddenly, yeah. So that was 2007. I don't know. Yeah, 2007 we met. 2008 we moved to Canada. While I was in Canada, I ended up being on a television show. And in 2019, March of 2019, the woman who's the host for the television show decided to post a photo from the show. Now, the episodes are all able to view online. And one of the things that terrifies me is that in the process of my asking for help regarding this situation, someone might have confused what I was saying and thought that it was an ad. No. So essentially, she posted a photo from this particular episode where we hosted a band called, an individual from a band called Let's Go to War. And the photo she posted was taken in a barbershop. And it was taken during the point of the day where the location owner was sexually assaulting me. This was a 70-something-year-old man who was running his hands up and down my arms, my sides. I was wearing a dress. He tried to stick his fingers in my vagina. He would touch here on my arms and my buttocks, and was speaking in Italian about all the things he wanted to do to me sexually. Which I know because the hairstylist, I was makeup, the hairstylist spoke Italian, and she just shook her head. She's like, you don't want to know what he's saying. There was one crew member who looked at me and just was giving me this dirty look, why are you tolerating that? And I was just no, guys, I was sexually abused as a child. This man smells, acts, sounds, looks like my grandfather, my pop-pop, who's one of the, would hold me down on the couch wearing nothing but his tighty-whitey underwear, forcing himself on me, tickling me until I stopped squirming and screaming, forcing me into submission, and just... I had flashback at this point and was, it's fight, flight, fawn, freeze. I froze. It was after that this location owner then ended up racially attacking our guest. And all of this aired on television, unscripted, without any warning or discussion about the fact that the racial attack was unscripted. The racial attack was essentially this man telling our guest that he wouldn't be, and he used a racial slur, if the man's mother had not had sex with a racial slur. If his mother had had sex with an Italian, our guest wouldn't be racial slur. At which point, the guest was no, and left. Now the thing is, had my sexual assault been stopped, he would not have been attacked. After the attack happened and we left, I was, on camera, and I was just this is so fucked up, and I was just venting about the situation. And I remember one of the crew members was she's talking about what happened to her, we can't use this. was 21, 22. 22. I was 22. Maybe had I turned 23 yet? No, maybe. I was young. This was my first job. I thought I had to take it for the team, to hold the location. I didn't think I had a choice. I'm sorry. So in 2019, 10 years after this episode, this woman posts a photo of the guest, Peter John Kerr, in the barbershop chair prior to the attack during the time period when I was being sexually assaulted, and I fucking lost it. Because the reality is, why are you, 10 years after the fact, using a photo of an individual who was attacked and assaulted on your show as a promotion for yourself without even addressing the situation? And not only that, but the sound guy then posted talking about the barbershop owner and about the racial attack, and they're basically just like, oh, it's just that's the barbershop, that's barbershop talk. And it's like, dude, you are two fucking super white people talking about an attack on, like, that is not just barbershop talk. No, that was a racist attack. And I called them out on it. And she, like, flipped out at me. And it was just like, no, dude. She said, people could lose their careers. I'm like, no, I don't think you understand that I was sexually fucking assaulted on set, and it destroyed my life. Because from that point on, I was not the same person. And not only that, Ingrid, but you fucking used that to your advantage to market yourself when someone else's life was risked. Not just me, but Peter's. Fuck you, bitch. I'm sorry. Possibility that she did something really bad because later on in her career she accepted money from the Dragon's Den, and she might not want it to have them know the reality of what happens. But no, there it is, guys. Anyway, I had been. My PTSD was so bad at that point. I had been trying to work things through. And I had mentioned what I was going through to the person who is the brother of an individual who ended up basically luring me into a situation that's a form of human trafficking, which I'm going to get into in a second. But I don't think the guest of the show, like, I had been married when I lived in Canada. My name has changed. So if anyone were to, like, look me up, the Jennifer Rafalo does not exist. I changed my name immediately when I moved home. I was like, no, I do not want any, I'm not attacking you. I didn't want to marry you to begin with. And the fact that the officiant forgot and was, like, 2 hours late, the fact that I remember walking down the aisle thinking to myself, I don't want to do this, 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 I'm not happy, this was a happy days for my life, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, as I'm walking down the aisle. But then my dad's just like, look, he's crying. And I'm just like, no, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, as I was walking down the aisle. I'm sorry. I'm using a laptop, but my cat stepped on the laptop yesterday and my mouse disappeared, so I had to find, like, a wired mouse. And I just did something strange when I moved it. So yeah. My name changed, and I don't know if Peter John was aware that I'm not a Canadian citizen, that I'm an American citizen who was living in Canada on a work permit for that television show. I also have not received any residuals whatsoever. I was only paid $150 per episode. I have no idea how much in residuals I may be owed, but it may be a lot. I don't know. Anyway, in 2017, so I ended up, divorcing my first husband. I fled. It was pretty much, I didn't want to marry him. He didn't want to marry me. He used me for a free trip to Canada. He did not want to be my husband. He wanted to have sex with other people and not touch me, complained that I was too needy whenever I wanted to hug or to hold hands or to give him a kiss, but complained that he was not having sex with other people. That was all he wanted. He spent the majority of his time on MySpace networking his band, which was mostly like talking to teenage girls, and masturbating. That was what he would do all day while I would work, go to school. He threatened to sue me for alimony, despite the fact that I was, while I was the sole provider. First off, the first year of us being in Canada was a loan, like a student loan through my mom. This was not like income. This was something I had planned on repaying her. She refinanced her house so that I could go to school. I was actually told that the only reason I was going to school at all was because my brother, who's 4 years younger, got a scholarship. And that was I had been working since the age of 15. I had been working 2 jobs. The only way I could go to school was because my brother got a scholarship. That was it. I, had been looking into student loans and stuff like that, and like, special effects makeup school didn't qualify as a student loan. It was a personal loan and without a cosigner, like, and they didn't want to cosign because I was like, all this stuff, and it was just like, okay. So like he threatened to sue for alimony, and it's just like, no, dude, I don't think you understand. The majority of expenses have been on credit cards. This is not like I have all this money that you're gonna get paid in alimony. Like, you owe me money. But I just was like, you know what, forget it. Neither of my parents, like, my dad was just like, file for bankruptcy, it's meant for people like you, essentially. Like, when I moved home, I was diagnosed with cancer, and he's just like, file for bankruptcy, that's what it's for. Not, you need a divorce attorney, we're gonna make sure, like, you need to do this. Nope, just take the hit, because, as a female, I'm not a male, and yeah. So that was my first divorce. I came home. I was diagnosed with cancer. I didn't want to come home, actually. I have to say that my first husband thinks I left him for someone else. That is factually incorrect. The truth is that he did not want to listen. Anytime I tried to discuss our relationship so that we could work on it together, he would dismiss me and just say that I was blaming him for all the problems and he didn't want to hear it. So essentially, I just let him believe whatever the fuck he wanted to believe, and it was just like, no, dude, like, we're done. I did not leave him for someone else. An ex happened to come into my life at the same time who had broken up with their ex, and we reconnected, and this man had convinced me that we would be moving to Portland, which is why I left Toronto. That was a lie. He actually did not want to date me. He had hated me. He might say that is not true. It is true. He abandoned me during my cancer treatment. He ended up at one point, while I was, after my cancer treatment, I developed trigeminal neuralgia, which is one of the most painful conditions known to mankind. And while I was at home struggling with that alone, he took out one of his contact lenses and gave them to a porn star, right off his eyeball, because she needed to see, and he finished his tour without a contact lens. I would not have left Canada. I would still be in Canada. I would have had my cancer surgery in Canada. I would likely be, like, that is not to say I'm not very grateful and thankful for the United States and being an American citizen. That is not the case. Like, I am very thankful. Like, I'm not, it is the case that I'm thankful. It is not the case that I'm saying I'm not. There we go. That's the phrasing I want. It's just like not very many people know this. I would not have been able to even get my cancer surgery had I not qualified for charity care. If I had stayed in Canada, it would have been fine. In the United States, it was like that. This was before the Affordable Care Act, and it was just like, no, there's a possibility that I might end up just living with cancer because I can't get surgery. Because I didn't have insurance, I couldn't find a job, it was the recession, there was very little places hiring. As a hairstylist, it takes a while to build up your book and find like a good salon, and I had been diagnosed, like just a lot of stuff was going on. So I had moved, when I got my cancer diagnosis, my mother illegally hijacked my medical care. And I need to be very clear about that. I was not allowed to have my own medical care. There was absolutely no legal precedence for her to do that. None. She illegally hijacked my medical care. And that needs to be understood, that she illegally took over my medical care. The moment I got my cancer diagnosis and went into the doctor's office to review it, my mother started screaming at my doctor that I would not be seeing her anymore. I had to see her doctor. That only her doctor was good enough, and I had to see her doctor. Well, the surgery that I had with her doctor, as opposed to 2 hours, took 5 hours because they couldn't stop the bleeding. After that, I spent a week in the hospital recovering. They only thought it would be 1 day initially, because that's what it is, 1 or 2 days. I spent a week in the hospital, followed by 8 weeks. It was either 6 or 8 weeks of, I ended up getting an infection in the incision. And so every single day for 6 to 8 weeks, I had to go into the doctor's office, and they would suction it out and then pack it with stereotape. The infection got so bad, they had to, it wasn't the infection, I ended up having an allergic reaction to codeine. And it was the combination of the allergic reaction to codeine and the infection that had gotten so bad that I ended up spending another, I think it was 8 days in the hospital to try and get it under control. Anytime I tried to handle my medical care, I was not allowed. My mother she had to be involved. I did not have say. I was not allowed to be in control of my own medical care. And much like her narcissistic abuse during my childhood, my dad says, just make your mother happy. Just make your mother happy. It'll be fine. You know your mom. Just make your mother happy. She's like, no, this is my life. This is my medical care. I should not be forced to see her doctors if I don't want them as doctors. I should not be forced to wake up to a circle of fucking 5 people praying around me because it's what my mother wants, when I told her I didn't want any guests. I had repeatedly, please leave. No, please leave. No, please leave, Mom. I need fucking space. No. 24 years old. She had no legal precedence to do that. It was 2 years, I think, 2 years after that eventually she finally was like, why didn't you tell me sooner? She's like, I tried to, you didn't allow me. I'm sorry for venting. Okay. That was, it was like a year after my surgery that my mom met her second husband. She met him on eHarmony. He was living in a church at the time. That relationship was not very healthy, and I told her, expressed my concerns, and she would start freaking out at me, screaming, who are you? You know nothing! You're my daughter! It's none of your business! Okay, Mom. Okay. There's just like nothing I can do. Like, you are with this is not healthy, but if that's what you want, there's nothing I can do. Anyway, so I had moved home, I had to file for bankruptcy, and a lot of the issues that have happened since, it seemed to be that people just think I'm like terrible with money. That is not the case. It was because of my first marriage, and then subsequently my second marriage. My second marriage, I had basically just broken up with someone who I had left my ex, the one who had convinced me we're moving to Portland. I had broken up with him. Because I was just like, I can't do this anymore. You refuse to go to a doctor's appointment with me. You don't want to deal with he basically was like, he couldn't handle my cancer. He's just like, he wouldn't even acknowledge it because he couldn't handle it. Like, I'm the fucking one going through it. And it got to a certain point where we went to see the movie 50-50 together, and afterwards we were sitting in my car, and he does not remember this because he blacked out in anger, but he like started screaming at me about like, why was I even with him because he abandoned, like, it was just like the weirdest fucking thing. And I'm just like, I can't, like, this is not okay. I had just started working at a salon that was inside of a larger facility, and there was someone there who had a crush on me, and we started seeing each other, and I truly regret it, because I wasn't ready. I needed my time and space, but it was like one trauma after the next trauma, and then with my mom, and it was just like so much. So I ended up seeing someone. I dated him for 2 years. It was not a good relationship. It was not healthy. It was very psychologically manipulative. I had started taking online classes. I had been taking online classes for a combined degree in journalism and political science, which I then planned to attend. Now, one friend had actually told me I didn't want to go to this school. I had wanted to attend MIT to obtain a PhD in psychology, focused in like neuropsychology essentially. And my friend was just like, no, you don't want to, that's not the school for that. And I'm like, no, that's where I want to go. And then after that, I had plans to attend, to use my on-screen experience and my journalism and all of this to get into broadcast journalism. He blamed, I only took a year, it was mostly introductory courses, and I have learning disabilities, so I did not do I did well in the classes, but I didn't do well with understanding the other students, and I owe them a lot of apologies. Anybody that was in those classes with me where I misunderstood and didn't communicate properly, I'm very sorry. Anyway, this is all important. This is all relevant. And I know it's 43 minutes in, but it is all very much important. So he had blamed his drug addiction on my attending school. So essentially I had dropped out of school to try and work on our relationship. And then he would start stealing my car and stranding me at his house for 5 or 6 hours at a time, to the point where my only option was to fall asleep. He would steal my car. He would steal my money. He would steal my cigarettes. Eventually, I was able to break up with him. It took a while to work up the courage, but I was able to break up with him. I had a great support system. I had good friends at that point in time. I was doing much better. And then, I want to say, about a month after we broke up, I reconnected with the man who ended up being... it was like a week after I broke up with him. I ended up reconnecting with the man who would end up being my second husband. We went out to lunch after I had taken a hair class in Atlantic City, because he lived in the area, or like a late lunch, early dinner, and just hung out and talked. And then I got back together with my ex, and then we broke up one final time. And then about a month, like 2 or 3 weeks later, was New Year's Eve. First off, my second husband was like texting me the entire time, just like saying hi, blah blah blah. And then it was New Year's, coming up to New Year's Eve, and I wanted to go see Clutch. I wanted to see Clutch in Brooklyn, and I didn't want to go by myself because I didn't want to run into my ex or any of his friends. So I reached out to the man who would ultimately be my second husband, and asked him if he wanted to go with me, at which point he's like, no, but you should come to this annual bonfire my friends and I have. It's like, you know what? Okay, I'll do that. I regret it so much. So much. I was very uncomfortable. I am not a drinker. All they did was just like drink around a bonfire in the middle of the woods. That's great for some people. It might have been okay for me if it was just like a romantic bonfire in the woods with two people, but I was not very comfortable. Anyway. I was just kind of like, okay. And then I, stayed over and we ended up talking the next day, and it was like, there was chemistry there, but nothing happened. And then, I want to say like a week later, he came up to my mom's house, and I made dinner, and we made out. We did not have sex. We made out. That was it. And he told me he loved me. And it triggered me so much because it was just like, what the fuck? I was just like, I think I can get there. That was my response. But I remember in my head hearing, or like the thought coming through my mind, well, some people in arranged marriages, and I guess it works. I don't know why that was my thought. I don't know why. It may have been because I was targeted at a time of my most vulnerable. I don't know, but it was like he had been fantasizing about the me he met when I was 16 years old, who was a grieving widow. At 16, he'd been fantasizing about for years. He didn't want me, and that's what happened. Was he ended up buying a house. My mom decided to sell hers. I gave up my entire life. I gave up my career. I gave up my friends. I gave up my doctors. I gave up everything, and I moved to 3 hours away to be with him. And it was like the moment I moved in, it just... he was a different person. And the moment we got married, so he wanted to marry me to get me on his health insurance. That was the only reason. He actually tried to get me to marry him in 2010 while he was in a relationship with someone else because he wanted me on his health insurance. Just like, no. Anyway, I ended up getting very, very sick after getting married to him. I had excruciating pain shoot down my arm and into my two fingers. It was the most intense pain I've ever felt in my entire life. It was, aside from the trigeminal neuralgia, this was excruciating. And it also caused partial paralysis to the point where I couldn't use my hand and actually this arm entirely. And then it moved to the right arm and then the legs and the torso. And it seems to come from spinal compression, quite possibly because at that point in time, my job was like this, and I didn't know it at the time, but I have 3 surgical clips on my neck. I saw multiple specialists. No one could figure it out, but the only relief I got was from lying completely flat on my back and releasing the spinal compression. And it took me about 6 months of lying completely flat on my back. He actually got very mad at me because he was working out of state at the time. Like, he didn't want me in his life. He wanted to own me. The moment we left the courthouse, I had to Google my legal rights as a married person because he had told me that he now owned me and that I didn't have any rights. And I was like, no, that's not true. He's like, yes, it is. I own you. I was like, no, you don't. I had to Google it and show him and be like, no, see, I have legal rights. You are not my owner. That's not how this works. And it was like the moment we got married, he told me he doesn't believe in women's rights. He owned me and all this stuff. Like, had I known these things before, I wouldn't have even like reconnected with you to begin with. Anytime I would like try to do something to better myself so that it could better our relationship, it was just like, no. He didn't believe in it. It was stupid. I ended up getting my real estate license, and then everything that's required in order to be successful in real estate was stupid, and he didn't want me to have it. Like, networking was stupid. Why do you have to be around people? Why do you have to be around people? It's stupid. That's stupid. No. It's a scam. Real estate's a scam. It's like, I made the mistake of choosing my marriage as opposed to my career. I should have chosen the career. I was just terrified because at that point I had been disabled for a year. I had no money. He had been paying all of my bills. I had no safe place to go. I would have been homeless. I didn't know what to do. Actually, I probably could have had him kicked out of the house or, something, had I known my legal rights, but I did not know my legal rights. And my dad, even at that point, just kept telling me how lucky I was that my ex was letting me. And I'm just like, letting me? I'm medically disabled. I lost 50 pounds before this man even noticed. 50 pounds in the matter of 4 months. He did not notice until my pants were falling off of me as I was walking around the house, and I had to ask him if I could buy clothes. As opposed to making sure I had a divorce attorney when I got my second divorce, my mother ended up buying herself a house, having me move in with him, and then immediately attempting to take control of my finances and trying to get me on welfare. As opposed to making sure that I had an attorney so that I could keep my house, my dogs, all 3 of my dogs, my job, my car, that I could keep my life because I had given up I was making like $50,000 a year plus, tips and stuff. I had just started getting back into film. My career was starting to take off again, and I gave everything up for this man who doesn't even believe that I had a career before him. Almost like he doesn't want to believe that I existed prior to our marriage, sort of thing. So I fled. One of the reasons why I didn't seek alimony was because in 2007, my aunt and uncle passed away in a plane crash and had a very large estate that was meant to be distributed amongst 8 beneficiaries, one of them being myself. However, again, I did not have legal assistance. I didn't know my legal rights, and basically the first few years there were a lot of court cases involving this, and then when finally they decided they were going to distribute the estate, and it took several years. I had been under the impression I was going to receive a portion of the estate, at which point I felt like I was, would be safe to not seek alimony. It was just like one of those things like, okay, I'll be safe, I can go, I can just get out, because the big problem was that my ex loved money more than anything else, and it was the fact that he was spending more money because I was in his life, that made him angriest, and I didn't want to ask for money because it would just make him angry, and I was in fear of my life. I was unaware of the fact that I was not going to be getting any estate. They actually ended up settling it. They cut 4 people out. I don't know why. I had been trying for 2 years. They just settled it, actually. There's it's a confidentiality. I know nothing about the agreement. It's not okay. I had plans to pay him back. Any of money that he had spent on me that made him mad. I had planned to pay him back. I had plans to buy a house. I had plans to go back to college. When I moved in with my mom, I had actually told his friend's wife that I was terrified I would kill myself if I had to move back in with my mom because of how much of an abuser she doesn't believe, and this is not like she beat me or anything. This is my mom didn't want me. She wanted this fictional child she made up in her own head that she felt that if she just kept forcing on me I would become, and it's just no. As a child, I'm not going to get into it right at this second, because I don't want this video to be too long. But she did not, I had told her when I moved in, I had a Bernie Sanders mug, and I asked her if it would be safe to put it out, if it would be safe for me to live there, because of differences in religious and political beliefs, because I am very much not like super liberal. I am quite liberal, but I'm not like on, there's a spectrum. I'm not like all the way to one side. And again, I'm not criticizing anyone who is. We all have our rights to be and believe what we want. So I'm not, criticizing anybody. I'm just saying where I'm more on the liberal side, and that was one of the issues. Like, I was a goth. I would express, my self-expression was on the darker side, and it was just like anytime I was not this conservative Bible thumper that my mom wanted me to be, she would start screaming that I wasn't her child, I had to be on drugs. I was just like, no, guys. There were other things I'll get into a little bit later, but I had asked her if I would be safe, essentially, and her response was yes, I would, and that they were open and welcoming of everyone. She lied to me. And the chances that she thought that by lying to me she could passive-aggressively get me to go to church and turn me again into the child she had fantasized about my entire life. Like, she thought something else was going to happen when I moved in with her, that like she regressed into thinking I was 12 again. And when I moved in, like my thoughts were, this was temporary. I need to focus on continuing my healing. I had such bad PTSD from battered women syndrome, and I don't mean physically abuse. I mean the psychological abuse can be just as bad. To make someone feel you're not human. And essentially, he explains to me that he was psychologically abusing and manipulating me because he didn't want to. He's like, well, I can't physically abuse you. Like, they'll see that. They don't see the psychological abuse. And the conversation that ended up happening, that was like the end conversation, was essentially him telling me he wanted to have a child for the specific purpose of abusing it. And I was just like, no, I will kill you if that happens, or you will kill me. That is where we are at. This is done. And I don't know what was going on, but someone who had at one point been a friend of mine, who may have still been in touch with my first husband, was under some sort of impression that it would get all this money when I divorced him. And I was like, wait, he has no money. Where the fuck did you get that idea? I didn't ask her that, but that was her response to my telling her that he was having an affair. But like, well, maybe if he didn't spend all his money. Where am I spending? What the fuck are you talking about? Where are you getting this information? Anyway, so I had asked my mom, like, when I moved in, like, it was almost like immediately she regressed and suddenly thought, like, I was there to be her servant. She would burst into the room, and, like, there was one instance, she had a party in the house and just opened my door and was like, I want to introduce you to so-and-so, and it was like the 16, 17-year-old child, this boy, and she, like, thrust him into my room. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I'm a medical cannabis patient. I have explained this to you multiple times. With my medical health issues, it takes me 2 to 3 hours to eat. And like, I need to eat. I need to be on my cannabis, which growing up, no, I was not I didn't do drugs. Because I don't like being not sober. I need to, like, my brain does not function well if I'm on anything around other people. Like, I need to be sober. When I'm on medical cannabis, it did take me a while to acclimate, but I don't like being around people because it's just, I don't. I get very uncomfortable. I'm hypersensitive to begin with, and it's like that hypersensitivity is just so much more. And for anybody watching this who is a cannabis user, you should know, as a thyroid cancer survivor, I have no thyroid, 2 parathyroids are gone, and over 113 lymph nodes gone. It is an endocannabinoid system, so understanding that I am someone who has, an endocrine disorder, no thyroid anymore, I'm on Synthroid. My experience, also with my childhood medical issues, like, my experience is very different than other people's. And essentially, like, I kept explaining, she was like, well, why don't you sit and eat with us? And it's just like, well, no, because basically anytime I'm around your husband husband is a misogynistic, bigoted asshole who, like, I talk about the things that are going on in my life, and he basically demeans, diminishes, and invalidates me because he doesn't believe women have rights. He doesn't believe in sexual assault. He doesn't believe in rape. He doesn't believe in these things. Like, why would I talk about this stuff? Why would I eat dinner with you? I put on blinders to pretend that you guys didn't exist so that I could minimize my time there and focus on healing. I don't want to interject. You guys this is your first purchased home as a married couple. I am not there for you, Mom. I'm there to heal and get the fuck out as soon as possible. And it was just like, she would start screaming at me to like, she'd be sitting in a chair and scream at me while I was doing something else in my room and start screaming at me because she didn't want to get up and walk 10 feet to get her cup of coffee. Could I go get it for her? What would you do if I was not there? Do you not have legs? You are a perfectly capable human being. You are abusive as fuck, Mom. Anyway. In 2017, when I moved in, it was nearly immediately that their racism and bigotry and hatred started showing through, and I actually started talking to people about it. There was one instance where they would have church meetings at their house, and there was one instance where there was like this laughter and conversation about how one of their congregation members was deported, and they believed that it was God's will, and they're just like, well, don't tell anybody. I was like, what the fuck? I had been asking people for help, and their response was just like, this is why I don't like religious people, or I'm so sorry you have to go, just pretend it's not happening. And it's just like, no, it is happening. I need help to get out of this, and to, like, other people, like, they should not be, what the fuck is going on? It got to a point where in January 2018, I remember walking in to the house while my mother and her husband were watching Fox News. They were watching a presidential speech, and I remember my mother saying this conversation between the two of them about how the media was doing their best to confuse and conflate people into believing that illegals are humans by using the word immigrant. And it was like, the majority of your congregation are not, I don't know exactly because I have not been to their church. I know that a large portion of their congregation are immigrants. So you're basically saying that your congregation are not humans because they're immigrants. Well, and the argument there would be, well, no, they're here illegally. It's only the illegal ones that aren't human. And it's like, we didn't have that conversation, but that's why we didn't have that conversation, because that is how it would have gone. And I remember texting someone. I was like, no, dude, I know, I don't know what to do. I will be, like, I need to report this. I will end up being homeless if I, and she's like, no, what's going on? And I couldn't tell her, for reasons I'm not going to get into here, but also because I didn't know this, but she was not my friend. She was not my friend. She thought I was a different person. She and one of the other people who I was associating at the time, who I thought was my friend, neither of them were my friends. I met through an ex, the ex who I moved back from Canada for, who did not want to be with me to begin with. When he and I dated in 2004, he essentially spent all of my paychecks, racked up my credit cards. He used to call me a sugar mama. I was just like, I don't have this money. But you just want stuff, so here you go. Here's all of my money went to you. This is not something I can afford, but all of my money went to you. And essentially it got to the point where he was just complaining that he wasn't having sex with other people. And basically he just used me for money. We broke up. He had sex with his best friend's sister. We went out to dinner. I remember him holding my hand after I had paid for it. Isn't this great? We can still do things together, and I can have sex with other people. I'm just like, get the fuck away from me. No, he likely doesn't remember it because he has intentionally, like, blacked out the majority of our relationship. Because, like, I don't want to get into it. But anyway, that is how I know those two individuals who had been in my life in 2017, who they may have been friendly, but they were not my friends. They don't know me. Anyway. In 2019, so I did end up finding a desk job. I was like, I need to move. The first year I was living with my mom, my health issues were so bad. I spent the majority of the year laying on the floor like I need to for my back, in excruciating pain, with my medical issues that I got. At one point, a lupus diagnosis, like I was dealing with all these issues. I developed Pectus Excavatum at age 32, which is virtually unheard of. Not virtually, I don't know why I used that word, but it's pretty much unheard of, developing after puberty, which leads me to believe I may have a hormonal issue, because at that particular point in time, I had actually started seeing someone who I'm a demisexual, which means that I don't have sex with people I don't have an emotional attraction to, I'm not emotionally involved with. And that's, again, why I have to explain, like, my boyfriend's committing suicide when I was 16 fucked me up so bad. My grief was through physical intimacy, or attempts at intimacy. It was not necessarily because I was sexually attracted to people. It was grief. Same thing with my first husband. My aunt and uncle, like, I met him a week later. My one uncle ended up having emergency aortic valve surgery, and then 2 weeks after that, my aunt and uncle died in a plane crash, and it was like, and they died in a plane crash the night my first husband and I had sex the first time. If family members or friends of yours die when you have sex with someone, run as far away as you can, as fast as possible. And that was basically like, anyway, so pretty much the majority of sex I had prior to 2017 and one particular individual had been out of obligation and not because I wanted it or was attracted to the person, if that makes sense. So I had actually met someone that I did share an emotional bond with, and was actually, like, for the first time, there may have been hormone production that I had not ever had. Anyway, I had developed Pectus Excavatum. I may have done it to myself while weightlifting. A lot of people don't know that I had, in 2016, started training to be a competitive power lifter, and that I had to stop because of it seems like a lot of my medical issues happened once I have a lot of muscle mass, I guess because it holds my spine in, with the incorrect position. So not having the muscle there, I'm like much more, not rigid, if that makes sense. But I remember every 2 years I had been getting chest CTs to monitor spots in my lungs that were discovered after my thyroid cancer. And when the day before I had my chest CT in 2018, I had been at Planet Fitness. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I was in a Smith machine, and there was one woman, I loved seeing her at the gym. She was like an 80-year-old woman on one side, just going the fuck at it, just doing her best. And then there was a gentleman on the right side of me, and it was strange because all three of us, the only 3 people in the gym, there were like 7 Smith machines. It wasn't like we were spaced out. It was just like the 3 of us together at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and just like, no, this is great. But I remember it was like I had kind of forgotten that my muscle mass wasn't where it was in previous years, and as opposed to like taking the weights off, going from squats to lunges, I think there were like 110 or 120 pound squats. I just shifted right to lunges, and it was after that first set of lunges I was just like, I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't breathe. I think I did like 4 sets. I have the workout somewhere. It was a cumulative 10,000 pounds entirely leg set. I do have the workout somewhere. But it was the next day that I went to get my CAT scan, and that was the very first time they noticed the Pectus Excavatum. So now, I also should be noted that in 2018, I was diagnosed with, and I might have had a childhood diagnosis of this that my parents thought I would grow out of, because that's what happened. Was I was treated at a pediatric hospital for, first off, at 8 months to about 3 years. I was treated for neurological issues that they couldn't really figure out. and I was on phenobarbital, and then later on had like issues with my hips where I was told that I wasn't supposed to sit cross-legged, but like that was never enforced and all this stuff. But basically I was diagnosed with hypermobility, and you can see like and it could have been simply that like I don't know if you can see, like I can turn my foot almost entirely around, my leg almost entirely around, my foot backwards. So I don't know if I like just got so into the workout that like my position, like my body position was not where it was supposed to be. And then you just like if I don't know. But I remember like the first time ever I could not breathe. Anyway. So I was having a lot of medical issues. Towards the end of in July 2018, I ended up, right after my lupus diagnosis, I ended up going to the bathroom, in my bathroom, and I was like looking at my hair loss, and I was just like, oh my god, I really do have lupus. And one of the issues that I had been dealing with was I get triggered by I have a movement disorder, an unnamed movement disorder. One doctor diagnosed it. She diagnosed it incorrectly because she didn't want to believe the other doctor's lupus diagnosis, essentially. Which has been very frustrating. But she had called it like a psychogenic. It was not. It gets triggered by the cold. When I'm cold, I end up getting muscle spasms, and it actually progressed from muscle spasms to full body flailing. And I ended up having this episode of 2-hour full body flailing that included my head. And I mean like for 2 hours, like this. I should have gone in an ambulance. My mom took me to the ER, and instead of telling them that I'm not an epileptic, she just assumed they would see me immediately. And for 2 hours, with nothing to protect my head and 3 surgical clips, had 2 hours. My brain fog was so bad. I was nauseous and spots and for weeks, to the point where I had been talking to someone I had met on Tinder for months, and my social skills were so bad, and I kept telling people I don't know how to respond. I don't know how to say no. I don't know how to communicate anymore because of my marriage. Excuse me. So what I would do, I would just stop talking to people. So if anyone had matched on me on Tinder and we stopped talking, it had to do with my anxiety, my battered women syndrome, and just not knowing how to person. I did not want to meet this man. I had no plans on meeting him whatsoever. It was after my medical issue that he was like, no, I think we should meet now. And I remember just kind of being like, okay, and not really feeling myself, and having the one person, she's like, no, I want you to, you should date him. I like his energy. And it's just I didn't want to be with this guy, but we ended up meeting, and then we ended up having sex, and I didn't want to have sex with him. And I remember even afterwards, he's like, I thought you said you weren't going to have sex with me. And I just remembered, I was like, no. I could not talk. That is how bad my brain fog was. And I kept telling him, I have brain fog. I have brain fog. I have brain fog. The majority of our relationship was just me sitting there watching him draw. And then having sex with him, unable to move. Just frozen in fear, stuck in my head. And I didn't know how to tell him no. It was almost like this I felt like I was under a spell the entire time. And that was from the moment I met him. I remember being like, I don't, just this zombie. I do have video footage to show, the head movement. And I actually also have email exchange with my I had employment at the time. The job that I had quit when I moved, they had offered me contract work. And I have email exchange because of just how bad my cognitive issues were. That something that when I worked for them initially, I would have been able to get, like it was data conversions. And I would have been able to get the conversions done very quickly, but it was like taking me 5 to 6 times the amount of time to get stuff done because my brain's not 100%. And I don't know if you can. So basically, I'll get to that. So I had and I'm sharing this because this particular individual is the brother of the man who lured me into this living situation. And that man himself actually did rape me when I moved into the house. Not the landlord, but the man that targeted me after my medical event did rape me after I moved into this house. Coercion is rape. I told him I wanted to be celibate. I had actually been involved with someone on and off for 2 years from the end of 2017. And then again in 2019, like we had broken up or stopped seeing each other. We weren't dating, we were just seeing each other very casually because I didn't know how to communicate because of my ex. But he was the one that, it was like, that was, And as a demisexual, like I wouldn't have had sex with this other guy because like there was no emotional. It was like I was obligated. But with the other guy, there was something there. Anyway, that guy, he couldn't handle my medical issues, and I was just like, that's okay. I care for you very deeply, but I went through that with my ex, and I can't. It's not fair for anybody. So we kind of stopped talking. And this other guy just... it also should be known that when he texted me for the first time, and this is very important, when he texted me for the first time, my phone started playing a song on iTunes that isn't even in my iTunes account. Like, I had never heard of the artist before. I don't like the song. I don't know where it came from. It was terrifying. And I remember messaging him, and like, I guess this is a sign. Like, I said, was that you? Like, what? Why did this happen? And I think there's a lot of miscommunication that happens through text messages. And I think one of the miscommunications is that when I was using voice to text, anytime I would type out LOL, it would capitalize it. And a lot of people don't know this, but when I write LOL, it doesn't mean like no, it means like that awkward, uncomfortable laughter. When I write ha ha, that's the no, LOL is so that needs to be known. Because at one point, I think I had posted something about like being mistaken for a child, and this guy's response was, well, there's nothing I can say that wouldn't make me sound like a pedophile. And I was just like, LOL, thanks for not saying it. But it might have read differently, is what I'm trying to get at. Like, no, if you're making that comment, then it means you are a pedophile, dude. Anyway. I ended up taking a job that I would not have taken had that medical event not occurred, because I was not myself. I ended up quitting that job nearly immediately because of what it was when I recognized what it was, but also because of how sick I got. I slept for 2 weeks straight. I could barely breathe. My nose, it was like a horrific flu with lupus fatigue, or whether it's lupus or not, I don't know. It's still like a struggling, medical diagnosis. but with fatigue, the fatigue that I would normally feel and all this stuff. And I was just like, with the other reasons, I'm like, I can't. So I quit. And then about a month later, or a couple weeks later, I found another job where I was hired on the spot, which was a little strange. And again, my cognitive issues were at the point where, like, there were some red flags, but I didn't really say anything because I couldn't react to them at that point, if that makes sense. Shortly after I started working at this business, that would have been November 2018, I went out with one of the individuals previously mentioned that I had thought was a friend. She's a female. She had posted a photo of us on, I think it was either Snapchat or Instagram. It said date night. I want to be very clear here and that it was a friend date. And I need to be very clear about this because I used the wrong word in 2019. And I want to first off preface this by saying I am so terribly sorry that my aphasia and my cognitive issues that I was dealing with and everything else at the time prevented me from using the correct word. I am very sorry because I know that individuals who are pansexual anyone in the LGBTQ community, the amount of what they go through, you guys go through, it is a lot of I don't ever want, there are some things that I'm going to have to explain about what happened while I've been living here, but I have not ever been the kind of person who, no, guys, I'm so sorry, I used the wrong word. I'm demisexual, I'm not pansexual, I'm very sorry if I confused anyone. And I need to explain that one of the things of abuse that I would deal with from my mom, and again, this is why there was a lot of confusion, because my mom was projecting on me really hard, and I'm an empath, and you can feel it, a lot of people who are empaths, who are highly sensitive, you can feel it, you can know. And it's like anytime I cut my hair, people would project on me that I'm gay. And that's fine. They're welcome to project that on me. It is not true. And it's not that I really care about whether or not people can think whatever they want. The reason why I have to say this is because my second husband attempted to excuse his affair and his abusing me by saying he wanted me to have sex with her, and that's what it was. So I do sincerely apologize to anyone who I may have harmed. Again, I'm so sorry for using the wrong word. I am non-binary. That is true, but I have to be honest. I will always be honest. And I do apologize about that. And one of the reasons I have to be honest about this is one of the ways that basically at one point during my first divorce, my mom took me to a Christian women's event and then forced me through this prayer circle where essentially they told me that I had to do whatever my husband wanted regardless of what it was. And at that point it was to have sex with women. And I'm just forcing someone to be sexually involved with someone they don't want to be in is very much abusive. And so again, I sincerely apologize. There is absolutely no way I can ever understand the struggle, and I'm so sorry I used the wrong word. So after this person and I went out, I had just been raped. I had been raped by a former coworker. We went out. It was he also is supposedly in the music industry, so I had an extra concert ticket and I invited him to the event. And we had, there were drinks involved. I rarely drink. I have since, I will like never drink again, essentially. But I would maybe have 5 drinks a year, if at all. And I had been, basically, I wore a shirt that said 0 fucks given, and that didn't mean I don't care. That meant, there are 0 fucks you are getting. Like, I am not fucking you. I don't give you fucks. That's what it meant. It was the shirt was saying that in case I couldn't. And I couldn't. And this guy actually just picked me up, said, give me some of that good sex, picked me up and put me on his dick. Like, moved my underwear, like, picked me up, put it on his dick. And I would have slept on the floor. This guy actually booked a hotel when he thought, when I told him I was going to bed, he booked the hotel when he knew I was in bed. I had an Airbnb elsewhere, and he was like, they only have king-size bed, and it's just like, no, dude, I know you're fucking lying. Like, I would have gotten a cot, had I not been drunk, I would have slept on the floor, but it was just kind of like, I was drunk, I got into bed, and this guy just started making out with me and picked me up and put me on his dick. And, I tried to pretend that, it was not rape. I tried to pretend it was. But that had just happened. And it turns out that guy, I had just started work, like I had been at the job 2 weeks. And it turns out he followed the office manager. Now this is a very small business. There were like 2 of us in the office and 1 person working from home and 2 owners who were there maybe like 2 hours a day, if at all. Excuse me. So it was weird that like he followed the office manager on Instagram, and she was like so excited for me. I was like, he said he wants to take you to Thailand. She's like, oh, that's so great. I was just like, this is weird. Like I was trying to pretend that, and I say it was weird because when the guy I had been in love with ended up reconnecting with me, which I'll get to in a second, her response, she was just like, I'm like, what, you want the guy who raped me, you were excited for, but the person who actually like genuinely cared when we were together and was like very, attentive to me emotionally, like to the point where if I was uncomfortable and just like tiny like flinch like that, it would be like, no, you're okay. What can I like? How can I help? Like, what can I get you? Like this, like he knew, like we were that connected. And that is what I mean by like by like demisexual, like having that bond, like. Anyway, so that had just happened, and this female friend of mine, it was the Lucas Brothers. I was like, dude, you want to go see the Lucas Brothers? Like celebrate at this job and stuff. And so whenever I've been around her, it's almost like as an empath, like I reflect her, and it can get really bad. And that's what happened. Was that we had 2, I think I had 1 drink at the bar and then maybe 2 drinks inside during the performance, and then we went out for more drinks, and I don't remember what happened, but I think I had 1 sorry, I just got a weird text message. I'm gonna look up and see who this person is. Anyway, I had I think at that point 3 drinks, and we get to this bar and then order drinks. I think I might have been drugged. I don't know. Because I don't remember what bar it was. I know we went to Tiki afterwards. Something in Texas. We went to Tiki afterwards, and I remember bits and pieces at Tiki, but I don't remember what bar we were at first. But I do remember, like, I think at this point it had been like 4 hours. I had had 4 drinks, and I blacked out. That's why I think I might have been drunk. Or not drunk, I think I might have been drugged. I was drunk, but I think I might have been drugged. And the next day, like, I remember leaving that and going to Tiki, and when we left, I told her I had been in love, I fell in love with, or I loved the guy who, I had been involved with in 2017, 18, and then, we split, and then And she's just like, I know you do, sweetie. And then, like, we went to Tiki, and then, it was, like, she got more drinks. By that point, I was, like, I had kind of, like, sobered up a bit. So, I don't know, that's why I think I had, in fact, been drugged. And I remember having a conversation with, this guy, who was, I think it was his birthday, and his friend was at the bar, and he was hanging out, and he worked, he's a pastry chef at Park, and I remember making a really awkward joke, because it was, they're talking about, Ariana Grande's song, Thank You Next, had just come out, and he was talking about doing a Thank You Next, like, Valentine's Day dessert for those people who were, like, on, like, celebrating Valentine's alone and stuff. And I had made, like, a terrible joke. They should be vegan beignets, and they would be, thank you next, do nots. So I'm very sorry if that's offensive to anybody. We had just seen a comedy show. I'm really sorry. I don't know why I'm smiling. I very, very much apologize. It was not meant to be offensive. But again, I was drunk. The next day, I remember for the very first time in my life, falling asleep and, like, vomiting in my sleep. I've never done that before, and that's like, I knew something was wrong. I don't know how I got home. She drove me home, but the next day I actually sent her a text message, and I apologized, and I was like, did I go on a rant about redheads? Because I have this weird memory about doing that, and I love redheads. I don't know why I would have gone on a rant about them. I'm very sorry. Like, how was my behavior? I blacked out. And her response was, I'm sorry, I'm not used to people who don't drink as much as I do. At which point we then got into a conversation where she admitted her alcoholism and that she wasn't ready to quit. So that had happened. It was like 2 days later, my ex, who this person went to prom with, the same guy that I ended up leaving Canada for, friended me on Instagram. And I have no idea why, but I was just like, okay, whatever. And then a few days later, the guy that I had told the universe I was in love with sent me a text message, and we ended up reconnecting. Now, there are other things that are going on that I can't get into right now. I'm not going to get into right now. But that ended up, not... He and I didn't ever have the opportunity to have, like, a real talk. And it's okay. I wish him the best. I really, truly do. I mean, at this point, I would love to reconcile. I don't think it's possible, given the situation. But I want nothing but the best for him, and, safety for him and his family. Like, that is very much important. But, like, anyway, so in March, so it was at the end of February 2019 is when Ingrid posted that photo from Banphoto. It wasn't March, it was February. And then in March, this person and I ended up going to see Roy Wood Jr. And Roy ended up telling a bit, talking about something that happened to him many years ago, in a place that my boyfriend who had committed suicide used to go to with the friends that he would do drugs with. And I ended up having, like, this massive PTSD episode in the middle of the set. It needs to be noted that I was not drinking. I had, like, I knowing what happened the last time, I was just like, I'm not drinking. So I had a tea and hot chocolate. Or it was, like, hot cider and hot chocolate. she also took a photo of us with the flash on without permission from either of us. And Roy, I'm very sorry about that. You deserve better than that. Anyway, it was around the same time that I ended up meeting the guy. I'm not mentioning names here for a reason. The brother of my landlord. I met the landlord. I'm gonna call him that because his brother had told me that this guy, he was looking for someone to paint countertops to look like marble, and had suggested me that his brother owns this he was a general contractor. He had this business. He was designing a logo, and he wanted me to do countertops and stuff. And I was just like, no, dude, I need the extra money. So yeah, like, let's go. And so I met his brother, and it was just really awkward. Like, I ended up doing 3 epoxy pours because of the fact that he would not let me do prep or finish work. It was almost like discrimination because I'm female. Like, I got to the construction site, I had a rolling toolbox. Why do you have a toolbox? This is a work site. Why would I not have a toolbox with tools in it? But it got to the point where, like, I had to wear form-fitting clothes because when you're working with epoxy, you don't want stuff to drag in the epoxy. And it was almost like they thought I was putting on a show for them. And there's just guys, like, watching me, and it was the weirdest fucking thing. But it was what it was. I lost about $200 on that job. I did not make any money because I thought that I was basically demoing my skills for him to work for other jobs. He told me I was part of the crew, and then later, like a couple months later, was like, no, I want you to see these houses that I'm working on, including the house that I'm in now, which is one of the work sites, which I saw in July of 2019. Now, in May of 2019, I actually had what was likely a stroke, and that's why I want to relax my face. That you can see this. The right side of my face became paralyzed. It was likely misdiagnosed, and I don't want to get into too much detail because of what happened, but I kept trying to correct people and explain that I had previously been diagnosed with trigeminal neuralgia, not Bell's palsy, but no one wanted to listen to me because I was presenting with what they thought was Bell's palsy, and I'm like, no, I've never had this before. Yes, you have. No, I've had trigeminal neuralgia. They are different things. And it was just like to the point where they ended up giving me Benadryl without telling me. I am allergic to Benadryl. It's not on my allergies list in case there is a life or death situation where I need an antihistamine, but I do not take Benadryl because it causes hallucinations. The fucking nurse slipped me a Benadryl telling me it was something else. I didn't find out about it until I was discharged, and it was on my discharge paper. There is literally no medical reason whatsoever for me to have been given Benadryl. Anyway, so not very many people knew that I had a potentially stroke, because of the fact that I may have this medical malpractice suit, and so I didn't tell anybody, because I was trying to pursue a legal course. There are other things, like they actually may have given me a heart attack. And this is important to note because in 2017, I spent a week in the cardiac care unit at Atlantic Care Hospital because of the fact that the muscle spasms that I have seem to correlate with increased heart rate of about between 150 to 170 beats per minute. And so being concerned that they pumped me full of steroids, then gave me an EKG, or an EEG, I don't remember what it's called, and I apologize. But that, for the very first time in my entire life, came up as abnormal possible atrial infarct. And I remember for a week, I couldn't sleep. I was like, I could walk like 10, 15 miles a day. I could not, like, it was bad. And now all of that happened after another doctor had put me on birth control for the first time in 10 years for pain. The birth control actually, made me, to the point where I couldn't function. I remember being at work, having a vendor start screaming at me, and my brain was just like, I can't handle this. And I remember, I'm like, I don't know what's going on right now, but I hung up on him because of the birth control. And I stopped the birth control immediately. But it was 2 weeks after the birth control, 2 or 3 weeks after I stopped taking the birth control, that I had this potential stroke. Anyway, so sorry, I'm just breathing. I should talk about this. So my mom, there were a lot of things going on at once. There are things that I can't talk about that happened to me after I moved in this house. And there are reasons for that. But there are things I can talk about. So right now, my mom, and when I had the potential stroke, it was Memorial Day weekend, 2019. My mom and her husband had just left to go to a timeshare in North Carolina. And I was dog sitting. And I woke up, I had this, I went to bed Friday night. It was like an ice pick was stabbed at the back of my skull. And I'm not joking. As that happened, I heard the words, "Bye, Jen," and saw this black shadow figure shoot a ball of black energy at me like that. And I fell asleep. And then when I woke up the next day for Saturday and Sunday, it was one of the most painful headaches I've ever had in my entire life. Vision was blurred. The visual auras, I could not function. When I woke up Monday morning, the right side of my face was paralyzed. I could not close my eye. I tried smiling, the side would not move. It was just this side. It was like this. Except not with this. Just complete paralysis of the right side of my face. My mom, I had basically, I let her know I was on my way to the ER because I was essentially just like, okay, I was trying to focus on taking care of me at that point. And I was like, I'll fill you in, but I'm just letting you know I'm on my way to the emergency room so you can let your other dog walkers know to take care of the dogs while I'm gone. Because I was not at the point where I could message them. I just needed to focus on getting to the hospital and getting stuff taken care of. And my mom, I'm so sorry, excuse me, started flipping out. And I mean flipping out to the point where she would not stop texting me. And it's just like, I need you to stop. I need my space. I need to take care of myself. I need you to give me 5 hours in the amount of time it takes for an emergency room visit so the doc, we can take care of this. Stop. She sent the pastor at her church to check on me. This man, who I do not know, had whatever in his head that he thought he could have them put them in my chart. This nurse came up to me and said, "Do you know this guy? He's claiming he's your pastor and that he wants us to call him when you're discharged and put him in your chart." I was like, "No, I don't fucking know him. No, don't do that." She's like, "It's a HIPAA violation." I'm like, "No, please do not. Thank you for letting me know. Do not put him in my chart. Do not call him. I don't want him near me." And so, I'm like, "You don't have to, tell him that. We can be nice about it, but I don't want him near me." And so, she was just like, he came in to talk to me and basically told me that I better call him or he would be very angry. And I didn't want to make him angry. I was just like, what the fuck does that even mean? And then he asked me when I was going to get a real job. And it's just like, I know I'm still, I'm still trying to figure, I'm still, new to the position I'm at, but why is my job not a real job? And then he had basically told me that he was good friends with the woman who was the trustee on the bankruptcy that I had attempted to file, where my attorney did not file paperwork because he thought I was going to be getting this inheritance that did not ever happen. He chose not to file to do his job correctly. And so this pastor was just like, when are you going to get a real job? I'm friends with this person. You should work with her. And I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what part of a management position is not a real job? And I'm letting you know this because after I got the job, my mom kept insisting I bring her to work with me and that they would hire her. Insisting that they would hire her. And her husband would keep enabling her. And I was just like, no, Mom. Like, first off, they're not hiring. Secondly, I'm not bringing you to work. Thirdly, if you want a job, there are plenty of places hiring in Philadelphia where we could commute together, but you're not working with me. No, bring me to work. Like, they'll hire me. I'm just like, no, Mom, they're not hiring. Stop. Like, what part of a management-based position is not a real job, Eddie? It's a good question. Now, there had been issues with that job that I will get into in a few minutes. But no, like, dude, what the fuck? Now, while I was my mom, like, flipping the fuck out with these text messages because I was not, giving her every second updates. And she's like, Mom, I need my space. Mom, I need my space. I need my space. I need 5 hours to take care of this emergency room visit. You need to stop. 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 And at which point, she was just like, essentially, they had just gotten to North Carolina. They had just driven, I think it was 19 hours, and they just checked into the hotel, and she's like, nope, we're coming back. And she got in the car, and they just started to drive back. And I'm like, no, why are you coming back? And she starts screaming that she didn't trust me. Like, what the fuck does that even mean? I needed 5 hours in the emergency room to tell you what was going on, and then we could reassess, and you just lost your mind and decided to return to New Jersey. There's no reason for you to do that. And what seemed to piss her off was essentially like, no, Mom, I need a vacation from you. I need my space. And that, like, all of a sudden, what? And like, I don't trust you. I'm like, what does it? You trust me with your house and your dogs, but you don't trust me for 5 hours in the emergency room. I don't know what she's been telling people for years about I'm sorry. I want to say, it was at that point where I was just like, no, like, I have been asking for almost 2 years for help from other people to deal with her racism issues. I had, like, employment where I was making a decent income, but all of my money was going to medical, like, food and medicine, and I was trying to build my own, like, build a business, and so, like, towards business expenses. And, essentially, like, I was doing that so I could move. And I was just like, I can't, like, you guys are super racist. You come home from church every week and you trash talk your congregation members. And it got to the point where they had, I want to say it was the end of July, or the very first week in August of I think it was the end of July in 2019, where they had just gotten home from church. And I remember hearing my mom say, why did, and she gave someone's name, have to give and then whatever this part of the service is called, in Spanish when he had just done everything else in English. And her husband's response was, well, they're breaking bad habits. I would never bring my daughter there. It would turn her off to God more. I was just like, they're breaking bad habits? What does it... This is a primarily Spanish-speaking church. speaking in a language that is comfortable for... There's an earthquake alert that went off when I said that, so please, like... This is a primarily Spanish-speaking church. How are they breaking bad habits if they are speaking the language that a lot of the congregation, this is their language. This is their safe place. What, breaking bad habits? Like, so, I had sent that again in a text to one of the friends that I had been trying to ask for help, or I had been asking for help for. He's like, no, that is super fucked up. So I decided to record them, and I ended up catching them being racist, and essentially what happened was they came home from church and were unpacking groceries, and I was sitting on the couch, and it was like a couple minutes, and my mom, like, they were unpacking groceries and talking and stuff, and they walk in, and I was just like, oh, so how was church? And my mom's like, it was good. And her husband then chimes in, for the white people. Like, excuse me? It's like, it was good for the white people. There were so many Spanish people, I felt like I was in the Caribbean. And he's a pastor at this church. She's the treasurer. And it was just like, no, sir, these congregation members are not there for your entertainment. What you just said is incredibly... I'm like, that is racist. No, it's not. And then he shut up. At that point, they left, and then I left. And I attempted to film a video that I was going to put on YouTube about how if we don't do anything in preventing things like that, that makes us Nazis. That is what I did this video. And you need to understand that there had just been like 2 or 3 church shootings at that point in 2019. And I was just like, dude, like, no, no, Mom, you guys are racist. Don't tell me you're not. Anyway, there ended up being 3 conversations that occurred. There was that. There was a secondary conversation I did not have the opportunity to record. Essentially, my mom came into my room and started attacking me. I had sent her a text. Again, I used the wrong word. I used pansexual. I meant demisexual. I'm so sorry I used the wrong word. But I had told her, that, I didn't feel safe living with her. She came in my room and just started attacking me. And essentially started accusing me of using her, when in the reality is she used me. As opposed to my having a divorce attorney, she thought she took advantage of me. I moved in, so the house they bought was through a referral agent. I had my real estate license at a point in time. I don't anymore. I had referred them to an agent. This agent failed to submit the referral paperwork, and it is a violation of the law to accept a commission or a portion of a commission from a real estate agent after the paperwork has been submitted and it's closed. So this woman screwed me out of my commission, the person I referred to, which I would have used as a deposit for an attorney or for a security deposit for my own apartment. I'm not moving in with my mom because I want to or because it was necessary for any other reason than I had nowhere else to escape my marriage from or escape to. It's like, no, you took advantage of me. I did not take advantage of you. I did not want to be there. You guys needed a house because your lease had ended and the owners wanted to move back in. I needed a divorce attorney. You tried to take over my life and my finances the moment I moved in, thinking I was an entirely different person. And I remember my ex-husband kept me on, it was a limited divorce so I could maintain health insurance. And my dad's like, you're so lucky. I was like, no, I would have a house. I would have my job. I would have my car. I would have all three of my dogs as opposed to have to splitting up my kids. I am not lucky because he's keeping me on health insurance. This man basically left me to die on the couch because he didn't believe I was sick, despite wanting to marry me to put me on his health insurance. Anyway, so she came in and just started attacking me. One of the things she didn't like was that I slept on the floor. My medical health issues require that I sleep on a very firm surface. She didn't like that I isolated myself from her. I'm sorry, ma'am, you are one of my main abusers. Why would I spend time around you? She didn't like the fact that she didn't understand that what I did when I was in that room was self-reflection, was work on myself, was work on building a business, was working on painting, was all this stuff. And I tried explaining that to her, and her response was, well, how's that going for you? Just like that. And I was like, excuse me? Well, how's that going for you, huh? You're still here! Like, I was trying to work on leaving, and I'm just like, what in the fuck? And then she asked me if I want to be saved. I'm like, no, my relationship with God is between me and God. It's none of your business. And it was just like, she could not handle it. And she basically said, I'm gonna tell you what I told you when you were 13 years old and you tried to run away from home. Just go ahead and try! I was 34 years old. Just go ahead and try to leave you is a threat. I had very few places to go. I ended up renting a car so that I could maintain my employment and get between residences. I ended up having someone offer me their fiance's house while it was on the market. What happened there, and then I had the friend that I went to see Roy and the Lucas brothers with, she had actually offered me a room in her house. Once she cleaned, like, she just bought a house, and she's like, yeah, once I get everything, like, painted and stuff, like, I had someone help me when I was, going through a situation, and, I know how much it means, and I'll help you, and just like, okay, thank you. Now, I had been trying to kind of cut her out of my life because I recognized that the relationship was toxic. Like, when I ended up dating the guy I had fallen in love with, she all of a sudden, like, immediately started, like, spewing all this racist shit. Like, he was 45 minutes late. There was a snowstorm, okay? And she's like, well, that's why I don't do black time. I don't date black guys. And I'm just like, what the fuck is this? And then, like, I remember in the beginning, and I'm, like, trying to figure out how does one navigate a situation? Like, how do I bring this up to you? How do I cut you out of my life? Like, or do we remain friends? Do we talk about this? Like, what happens here? And that was in 2017. And then in January 2018, I remember she wanted to buy a new vibrator because hers had broken. And so I went with her to go shop. Because I'm like, oh, great. Maybe I'll get some sexy lingerie to wear to see him and stuff. And so we're in the store, and I remember her, like, pointing to a wall of dildos. She's like, so which one's his dick? Like, excuse me? And I felt, like, obligated to answer, so I just kind of, like, picked one and pointed. It was the most uncomfortable thing. She just, like, pointed to all of the black dildos. Like, which one's his? I'm like, what the fuck? Anyway. She was the one who offered, like, it was weird. Like, there was one point, she sent me a text message telling me I should grow a dick, so that she could date me, at which point I was just like, LOL, love you, but it might have read differently to her. I'm like, no, this is very fucking uncomfortable. I don't know how to step away from this situation. I don't know how to end this relationship, this friendship. This is very, very strange. Am I allowed to end this friendship? Like, my social skills were so fucked up from my marriage. Now, it takes me 2 years to open up to someone. It takes me 2 years to be comfortable enough around someone to be myself. And so, like, I was still in recovery from everything that was going on while dealing with the stuff from my mom and her husband. And it was just like, Anyway, so my sorry, I just want to get back to, I'm going to have another sip of this so I can stay on track. So I had asked the person whose fiance's house I was staying at, said, can I, it would be either the 1st or the 15th of September. And 1st or 15th. You have to understand, it was the or 15th. And this is a very important point. Because, so it was I moved in from, I think it was August 14th. And he had the house on the market. And she, started freaking out when we started getting close to the 1st. She's like, you were supposed to be out of there the 1st. And I'm just like, we'll extend it another week, but you were supposed to be out of there by the 1st. I was like, no, dude, you agreed to the 1st or the 15th. The bankruptcy attorney not doing his job properly destroyed my credit to the point where I had seen 2 apartments. I had seen one in South Philly that was perfect, but they wanted me to sign a 2-year lease with a co-signer, which I did not have. And I thought 2 years was a really strange duration for a lease. And her reasoning was she wanted to keep people safe. I was like, what does that mean? And I'm just like, this is just a little awkward for me. I think that this is not the right fit. The second apartment I fell in love with. The owner was the nicest guy. I loved the apartment. It was in a perfect location. It was perfect. Excuse me. But his finance guy was concerned because of my bankruptcy stuff. And I explained the situation, and this guy himself had been through a rough divorce and understood and had given me his bankruptcy attorneys, and I was going through so much, I had just had my life threatened. My mom had started stalking me. There was all this stuff going on, and I had been under the impression from my last bankruptcy attorney that I could only file bankruptcy in the state of New Jersey. So the attorneys he'd recommended me to in Pennsylvania, I was I didn't bother. I was not thinking I should have contacted them. I deeply, deeply, deeply regret it. Because it was the perfect apartment. And he was so nice. So nice. Anyway, I then saw another apartment that was now while all this was going on, the owner, the guy who ultimately ended up being my landlord, kept telling me, no, the house it's finished. The house is yours. The house is yours. And then he was like, I have someone else interested in it. And he's like, the house is yours. I'm like, dude, make up your mind. I need to know what's going on. I have a finite amount of money. It's another earthquake. I have a finite amount of money. And it's to the point where I don't have very many options at this point. It was I had enough for, so my dog got kennel cough. At one point, I had someone I had someone offer me a place to stay for a brief period of time after I ended up leaving the house that I had been at, because they just wanted me out of there, even though she did agree to the 1st or the 15th. So I had then I went into a motel, where my anxiety was so bad because I basically had to stay awake every night in case my neighbor had a problem with one of her clients. I had been taking my dog to doggy daycare at a certain point because I couldn't bring her into the office. Eventually my employers did allow me to bring the dog into the office, so I wasn't having that expense on top of everything else. Because I was spending $400 to $500 a week more than I was making, because I had no other. I had to rent a car. And one of the things was I got the motel because the car had it was a keyless entry. So if I were to have slept in the car, which had I had been considering sleeping in the car and then showering at Planet Fitness because I still had my membership, and then taking my dog to either doggy daycare or with me to work. But the thing is, with the keyless entry, like, the key would be with me in the car. Anybody could open it from the outside, so it was not safe. So eventually, I had someone offer, like, a childhood friend had offered me a place to stay with her mom, and her mom doesn't know me. Like, she knows me from childhood, but she doesn't know me. And I deeply regret staying with her. I should have, it was safer for me at the motel. Anyway, while all this was going on, the landlord, he's just basically put me in a position where I had no choice but to move in here. And I did so sight unseen, and he did not finish renovating this house. It's actually worth less now than it was when I toured it as a work site, and I have photos to prove it. It was almost like once I moved in, it was almost like he started shaming me that I should feel grateful to have this house. I'd start bringing up habitability issues, and like, he didn't want to handle them. Now, I ended up having a subletter, my tenant. I called her my roommate, but she was my subletter, and he didn't start fixing things like rewiring stuff that needed to be rewired until she was about to move in, which was 2 months after I moved in, and would tell me it was because she was moving in. Like, it was almost like he expected me to work on the house while I was living here, and then got mad at me for letting him know that there were issues that were his responsibility to take care of. Like, there's a Pushmatic breaker system in the basement, and one of the breakers needed to be rewired or replaced, and he's just like, wanted me to do it. And I had to Google it, and I sent it to him, and I was like, no, I can't do this. Like, I looked up a video, and I explained the issue. Like, I'm not capable to I'm not an electrician. But like, he wanted me to do the work. And it's like, yes, I have worked on homes. I can tell you, like, there are foundation issues with this property. And he doesn't believe me. Like, I can point out the structural issues and the damage and explain what's occurring. But there is chipped paint. Like, it's not up to code. Like, the floor is torn up. Like, he removed one of the things that holds the kitchen vinyl flooring in place. He removed it. So now the flooring is like bubbled and all destroyed. If he had put it back, the flooring would be fine. But it was almost like he intentionally it was the most like, the downstairs sink that the washer drains into was all clogged with mud for some reason. And so when I did laundry for the first time, the basement flooded. And when I showed him, he just like started freaking out, saying it wasn't like that when he left the property. I know that's a lie. But anyway, so while I was in my period of homelessness, I had, and this is important, it had been one of the weekends that the house I was staying at, they had a lot of showings. And it's one of the reasons why I had to take the dog with me to work or put her in doggy daycare. Because I would put her in a crate, and her anxiety would be so bad that she would try and get out of the crate, and when I would get to the house, she had scraped all of the skin off of her nose. All of the skin off of her nose. And it's just like, I can't do that to you, sweetheart. Like, you have, no, baby, why are you doing that? So that's why we ended up, it was pretty much every weekend, or like every day, essentially, there were showings. So I ended up there was one weekend, there were so many showings, I was just like, you know what, I'll let you guys have your space. I need to focus on a project that I was working on, some self-reflection. I'm going to talk about in a second. So I ended up finding the least expensive hotel I could within like a 200-mile radius, and it happened to be in Reading, Pennsylvania. And I ended up driving out to Reading with my dog. My cat had been staying with my ex. I figured it was the safest place for him. He, you know, it was the safest place for him at the time. So it was just me and the dog, and we went to Reading. And one of the things that had happened was, a few days prior, the song, what was it, Don't Dream It's Over by Crowded House came into my head, and I hadn't heard it in a very long time. And I'm like, oh, this is, and I looked up the song, and I found out, like, the guy who wrote it, like, it's just about life, but the guy who wrote it ended up opening up schools. And I'm just like, this is amazing, because I had planned to open up schools at one point. And I was on my medical cannabis, and I sent a text message to the person who had offered me a room in her home once she got it all situated. And I think I might have confused her, because I sent her the link to the article. I told her the song had popped in my head, and I was just like, yeah, I think I'm going to use my mental illness to help open schools. Now, what I meant was, my experience with, you know, my mental health, not my mental illness, my mental health, you know, my experience with mental health, is one that I'm going to get into in a moment, but I think she thought something else was going on. Her response was that she couldn't handle a discussion about mental illness at the time, at which point I was just, I don't think she read the article, because it was not about, like, her response indicated she has no idea what I was talking about. There was a very serious miscommunication, and it was essentially after that exchange, I unsent everything and I apologized. And it was after that exchange that suddenly the room went to somebody else without even discussing it with me. At which point I was just like, oh, okay. Anyway, so one of the things that I had been working on, that I ended up working on while I was in Reading, was, so for years, and I mean like 5, 6, 7 years, I had been trying to talk about my childhood and my experience, I had attended an alternative school for the duration of my high school, most of my high school career. And I was able to choose the alternative school that I went to. Not many people are able to do that. But it was just, I had wanted to talk about, you know, be open and honest and discuss about what I had experienced growing up in a conservative Christian environment, this stuff. Anyway, what I had been suffering with my ex-husband, I had been suffering from such bad aphasia that, like, there was someone I had been, like, sharing, I had made some friends, and I'd, like, email one back and forth. It got to the point where I would spend 9 hours writing one paragraph, and, like, the words were not there. And, I mean, this was, like, every single day for weeks straight. I could not, I stopped writing emails, and I just apologized. I'm like, I'm so sorry, my aphasia is so bad right now, I cannot email you. Like, one paragraph for 9 hours. So I had been working on self-reflective therapy by way of writing an autobiography. And so I ended up doing a video about alternative schools that had morphed into something it shouldn't have been, quite possibly because of the fact that on my way to this, so I'm a highly intuitive individual. I have been a medium for a majority of my life. It's just not something I really focused on. Like, it's there, but I had kind of, like, had to turn it off as a survival skill. Anyway, while I was driving, there was an Amber Alert for a young child's, little girl who went missing and was unfortunately murdered that weekend. But I connected with her, and it was like, I was praying for her, and, like, it felt like my heart was torn out of my chest, and, like, there was something very, very wrong. Like, it was very, very wrong. And, like, I don't know the details about what happened, because I found out that her body was found, but I couldn't look into it. I couldn't. But I can tell you guys that, and I'm sorry I keep saying you guys, I need to work on that. I can tell you that, she detached, while it was happening. she was like 3 or 4. She detached. She had to. It was too much. I'm sorry. Anyway, that had, like, I may have been connected to her in a way that impacted me a little more than I expected with everything else that was going on. And one of the things that my second husband hated and used to attack me for, well, not attack me for, he didn't like, and at one point, the woman who, now I don't have 100% confirmation that she was his mistress, but I do, everything kind of indicates that yes, she was. There was one point when I walked into the house and they were talking, because she was his best friend, one of his good friends' wives. She was one of the only two, she and her husband were the only 2 people at my wedding to my ex. But like, I remember walking into the house and just being myself, and her just like, calm down! Like, I'm being passionate, why are you telling me to calm down? This is not a calm down moment, this is just me speaking. And that's what happened, was when I speak with emotion, it was just like, calm down! Like, what do you mean calm down? Anyway, so I was very passionate in this video, and it ended up kind of derailing, and it should not have ever been made a video, and I apologize about that. But I had asked someone, the person who actually then offered me their mom's house, I had asked her if she had wanted to share her story. Because she should have gone to an alternative school, but ended up going through a program through the district at the home school, like the home high school. It was a very different program, and her very different life and everything. And I asked her to share her story, and I did. Now, I didn't disclose her name or anything, but she wrote, it was very well written, and I talked about it. And I did say I was going to talk to her mom. I didn't. And I didn't because when I was staying at her house, it was very uncomfortable. Like, her mom seemed to be agitated when I kept turning down wine. It's like, no, she invited me to her other daughter's wedding, like, the previous year, and I did have, like, 2 or 3 drinks at that wedding, but I don't drink. I'm not someone who drinks alcohol. Like, maybe once 5 times a year, that's it. So, I was like, no, thank you, and she was, like, getting really agitated that I didn't want to drink with her. Very strange. Like, she was fine with it, but it was just, like, slightly irritated, because I don't want to offend her, but she's just slightly irritated. Anyway, so I did this video about alternative schools, and it ended up morphing into something else, but it was very important at the time because of certain things. Like, basically, when I was in the 8th grade, there was a boy who I had a crush on in the 7th grade who felt really bad for me because I had no friends and dated me for one day and then dumped me and made fun of me because he only dated me because I had no friends and he felt bad. And then I remember he spent one class period just drawing on my arms in pen, just sitting there drawing on my arms. The teacher didn't stop him. I froze. Again, fight, fawn, or freeze. For me, it's typically fawn and freeze. And so all of it, I had to go to the school nurse, and she starts, "Don't you ever let him do that to you again!" Thank you. I needed that. But, scrubbing the ink off. This kid wrote a rape threat in my yearbook. Like, in the 7th grade, at the end of the 7th grade, my family had moved into a development that was in the process of being built. And I had been sitting on my rooftop smoking cigarettes, and this boy and his friends were, like, biking and skateboarding and stuff in the development. And he saw me, and he knew exactly where I lived. And he wrote this rape threat and changed it to, instead of rape, it was expect you to have sex with me. And basically, like, was laughing and, like, I know where you live and all this stuff. And I was just kind of like, I don't know how to respond to this. But that fucked me up so bad, like, that I could not function when I went to high school. when I got to the school. Like, there were, I think, like 1,000. I don't even know if he moved or anything happened. Like, I don't know. There were over 1,000 students in the school, and it was the not knowing, constantly being in fear was one of the biggest issues that I had. Also with my learning disabilities and everything else, just so many students. It was, anyway. I had in the 8th grade, so after the 7th grade, that was just absolutely torture for me. Like, there was another student who started just gaslighting me, and specifically, abusing me specifically because she claimed that in the 2nd grade, I tore up her Kumon homework, when I didn't live in the area in the 2nd grade. We lived 2 hours away. There was literally no way in the world I tore up your Kumon homework, and I was not even invited to your house until we were in the 4th grade. So, like, I don't understand why she started attacking me and blaming me for, like, fucking with me. Like, 7th grade was fucking awful. They had broken everybody up into teams, and I ended up in a group of kids where I had 2 friends who were not always in the same class as me. So, like, it was rough. The 8th grade, I ended up on an antidepressant because I had recognized that I didn't have real friends, and what I was going through at home was just so I couldn't handle it. I was not, I need to be very, very honest about this, I was not suicidal. I have not ever been suicidal. There was a point, there is a difference, and this needs to be known. There was a point where the abuse, the psychological torment that I was going through was so bad from my mom. Like, it got... Now, I had forgiven my parents, and that was another thing. Like, when my mom started screaming and threatening me, I had basically told her, I said, I know I was a difficult child, but, I forgave you and Dad many years ago. And it was like, how dare you? Like, her eyes, like, you forgave us? Like, what do you mean? Like, what did we do? Like, pissed off. And I'm like, no, like... One of the things with my mom has narcissistic personality disorder that's never been taken care of. She may have taken care of it since I've left. I doubt it. One of the things was, it was her feelings would be hurt. Her feelings would be hurt. Just do what your mother wants. So don't hurt feelings. Like, don't hurt her feelings. Like, my dad used to joke all the time, don't play video games with your mom. She will throw the controller across the room and start screaming if she loses. Or why they stopped playing Risk. Anytime she would lose, she would flip the board over and pieces would go flying and get really mad. And, like, just do whatever your mom, like, make her happy. Don't hurt her feelings. But it would get to the point where if I would hurt her feelings, my father would corner me in a room, grab both my arms and start shaking me and scream at me for like 20 to 45 minutes for hurting his wife's feelings and not be like, until I behaved. And it was just like, you just shut down. You just shut down and there's no way to function. So, it had gotten to a point, where I had basically, like, my mom she'd go through trash cans, she would go through all of my stuff all of the time. She would attack me for my therapy, my writing in my journal, because it was, as someone who, people who but life has, there's light and dark, there's good and evil. It's not, we can't just focus entirely on the good and not acknowledge everything else is going on and just be like, no, there's not, that doesn't exist. We're going to pretend that doesn't exist and stay up here all the time because this is where we need to be. Like, no, that's really unhealthy. So a lot of my writing was darker because it evoked emotion, and it was also helpful for me to release what I was going through, and she would just attack me. She would go through all of my stuff to try and, like, find it, and then And it got to the point where, like, I could not be me. It was because I would be attacked for being me. I was not a Jesus, like, I was not allowed, like, I eventually was able to purchase certain albums and music and stuff, but I mean, they would force Christianity on me, like, force it, to the point where at least once a quarter my mom would take me to Christian women's and Christian children's events and, like, Christian youth events and, like, force me to be there. And one of the things you need to know about her narcissism, there was one teen event where, like, they were talking about people, if anybody has lost someone to a drunk driver, stand up. And, you know, people stood up. My mom stood up. I stood up. My mom turned, "Why are you standing? Who did you lose? I lost my niece!" And I'm just like, wait, what the fuck? This is a teen event. She was my cousin, too. Even if I was 3 when she died, okay? And I know other people who have died because of drunk drivers. But it was just, like, attacking me because she wanted all the attention. And it was like, what the fuck? So essentially, I had said to God, oh my God, and again, this could be very triggering. So if anyone has ever had any sort of thoughts, like, to stop watching. Just stop. I'm going to stop watching. Because I know that while I myself was not necessarily suicidal, this may trigger someone who is. But basically, I had said, God, I don't want to die, but there has to be a purpose for me being here. If I took a handful of Tylenol PM and, like, a swig of Southern Comfort, and I was like, if I wake up, I wake up, and I know there's a purpose for me, and I won't ever try this again. If I don't wake up, thank you for bringing me the peace that I get out of this abuse, because we are not born here to be abused. I woke up, like, 2 hours later with a massive headache and insomnia. I went to the school therapist and tried to explain, like, the abuse at home and what happened, and like, that I needed help, and as opposed to doing her job and contacting DIFUS, I don't remember exactly. My mom claims that I had left a voicemail. I don't remember leaving a voicemail. If there was a voicemail, it was the therapist, which may have violated some sort of laws, I don't know. But suddenly my mom pulled me out of school, took me to a carrier clinic, and demanded they put me in inpatient. They did an intake, and they're just like, no. Like, you show some signs of depression, but no. And my mom would just start screaming, this is not my daughter, she's got to be on drugs, this is not my child. And I'm just like, no. So are you going to do it again? No. Okay. So let's get you in inpatient, or not inpatient, let's say an outpatient group therapy. So I started outpatient group therapy, and, I started seeing other doctors. I did get an antidepressant. I did not do anything. I was then so I had been, in the 7th grade, I was diagnosed with daily migraines, which I now know was likely due to mast cell activation disorder and not being able to be around certain chemical fragrances, because the migraines would occur the same time every day when I was in the same class with the same teacher, who likely wore a specific perfume or washed her clothes in like a certain, because it was I've noticed this before. I had a coworker who was wearing, I don't remember, Marc Jacobs, and that's it. She would come into the office within 15 minutes. I would have a massive migraine with light auras and nausea. Like, I can't be around certain chemicals, certain fragrances. So anyway, when I was diagnosed with that, they had actually put me on a sedative. So no one at that point took into consideration the fact that I was on a sedative and how that would impact my well-being. So they put me on an antidepressant, and I was in group therapy. There was a point during the group therapy that something occurred that I'm not going to get into right now, but it does need to be noted that I do need to discuss it at a later time, because again, I think there may have been some laws violated, but I'm not going to get into it. Anyway, when I ended up in high school, I couldn't handle what was going on, and they ended up giving me an IEP, and I was allowed to choose from one of 3 options for a different school. Like I left because I could, I got A's in French and in choir. Everywhere else I stopped doing homework. I could barely function. I had actually asked to be excused from gym class. There was actually, my gym teacher was so understanding. There was one day I asked if I could just like not attend the class and just go home early, and he's like, yeah. Like he understood, and I'm very grateful for that. But to be truthful, I may have taken advantage of that a couple of times more than I should have without asking him, and that was not very helpful. So I do apologize. But so I had an IEP and ended up seeing doctors and stuff, and I ended up choosing to attend a school located in the place where I had at one point been through outpatient group therapy. And I'm sorry. This is already 2.5 hours, and so I had made this video in 2019 kind of talking about the school, but no one really knows why I went to school. My mom, they said I was misdiagnosed as bipolar because anytime I would show any sort of emotion whatsoever, my mom would start screaming that I wasn't her child. And it got to the point where I was so fucked up and confused because when I was 12 or 11, she spent and made this big deal about reading this book to me about puberty and about how I would be going through all these changes and get emotional and start crying out of nowhere to be prepared for it. It was like the moment puberty hit. Now we have to remember that hormones and pheromones are very vital in human communication and interaction. And it was almost like the moment I hit puberty, my mom saw me as a threat. In her view, everything changed. Because the moment I started being emotional, all of a sudden, you're not my daughter, you have to be on drugs. It's like, no, this is the normal hormonal changes you were telling me about. Why are you attacking me? You're not my daughter! Okay. So eventually I ended up being on birth control, and the emotional swings and stuff from the birth control ended up being the misdiagnosis for bipolar. And it was anytime I would try and stand up for myself, it was seen as a swing. Now, this isn't like, bipolar is, it's like over time. And what she misunderstood, like conversationally, it was like it changes in emotion during a single conversation that to her was bipolar. And like it was not. It was situational depression. From a lot of things. I was only on antidepressants and antidepressant and a mood stabilizer for, it was like 4.5, 5 years, like the duration of high school. And once I left, I think I was on it for like a year after high school, and then the doctor's like, no, you grew out of it or you were misdiagnosed. Like that's it. Like at one point they diagnosed me with ADHD. I may have ADHD. Now ADHD symptoms are also very similar to CPTSD symptoms, so it could have just been the misdiagnosis for that. But I remember being on Adderall. Actually, I remember going on vacation it wasn't vacation, we took a family trip to Michigan so that we could mingle my grandparents' ashes in the mausoleum that my grandmother was at. My grandfather had passed away, and we were taking his ashes to be with his wife's. And I remember right before we left, my doctor had put me on Adderall, and we're on this trip, and I did not get any sleep. I was shaking like this. I could not eat. I could not sleep. And I complained to my mom. I was like, like the doctors know what they're doing. You stay on the medication. And I'm just like, I could not eat. I could not sleep for a week like this. Finally, when we came home, I went to the doctor and they took me off immediately. Like, she could have made a phone call and explained my symptoms and taken me off while we were on vacation. She chose to force me to go through that it was like 7 to 10 days. Anyway. Sorry. Let me get back on track, so I apologize because I am all over the place. But I have not been on my medical cannabis for a few days, and thankfully, like, I'm able to focus right now. It's not that I can't focus when I'm on it. I feel like being in this house, given everything that's going on, it's just been a lot to try and talk about this while on my medicine, and so I'm very grateful that I'm able to do this. So there was that. I ended up, going to, basically I couldn't handle high school, and so I had 3 options. One school was like almost like a prison, but it wasn't. That's the only thing I can describe it as, because that's basically like what was explained to me during the tour. Like no shoes with laces, no pants with pockets, no outside pens or pencils, no purses, very strict and stringent, and it was just like, okay. There was another school that I saw that I should have gone to. Now, it's not that I regret going to the other school, I just know that I would have benefited much better from this. It was a gifted and talented program, it was K through 12. The thing is that, first off, the principal or dean, whatever she was, started off her conversation about the school, about how they understand how a lot of children only have a 15-minute time, like focused time span, and they cater to around that, and then proceeded to talk for like an hour and a half. And then, like, my parents had guilted me into believing that I was such a horrible person. When we were on this tour, all of these second graders, like, ran up to me and started hugging me, and I was just like, I don't want to be a bad influence to these innocent minds. I don't think this is the place for me. And then the third school we saw was located inside of where I had attended for the outpatient group therapy, at which point there were small classes. The teachers were very attentive. It was very therapeutic. And I was like, no, that's the environment that I needed at that point in time. Especially since I had been dating someone who was a heroin addict. I have not ever touched the stuff myself, ever. I don't do drugs, but I did recognize that he made his own choices, and it was very different. He was self-medicating his schizophrenia with heroin, and that's what helped him. That was it. Like, it's a very, very different. Now, again, I only know from the experiences I've had shared with him. In the grand scheme of things, I don't know what his world was like outside of being around me, but I know he was like around me. And with the exception of the few times we hung out with his friends that he used to do stuff with, it's not like it was just like a regular relationship. I don't know how to explain it. But I do remember that this school, did have a drug group, and I had actually asked if I could join the drug group so that I could learn how to be a supportive partner without being an enabler. And I'm really thankful that they allowed me that. Obviously, like, I don't remember much about that at all. Just they were very helpful in allowing me to be there, to be supportive, for my boyfriend, but also for the people who were also in the group, and I'm very thankful. Anyway, in the video I did about schools, there were a couple of things that I mentioned. I mentioned my misdiagnosis. It was a very true misdiagnosis. I had mentioned how my parents were upper middle class. Now, 20 years ago, when I was in high school, almost 20 years ago, a two-parent combined income in the low six figures would in fact have been considered upper middle class. Now today it's very different, and it needs to be noted that the only thing, like, the school I went to accepted the students from the entire state. So I had made a comment about how my parents were able to get me in a upper middle class. What I meant was, so we had moved, my parents had sold a house and a business in South Jersey to move us to be closer to my mother's job and get us in a better school district. And they had, both their business and their house was what helped buy a house. And like, that is the difference between the expense where we were living, and like a business and a house was the same price as a house with some furnishings. It is like a huge, like, you need to understand that. So in that area, I guess then we wouldn't have been considered upper middle class. So I do apologize if I confused people. It's not like we had all this money. We did not. Like, we were comfortable. We were okay. Nobody like went without, necessities, and I'm very thankful and was very blessed for that. Very grateful for everything my parents did. But this is not like my first husband's mother threw a temper tantrum because her father spent over $1 million on her wedding, but my parents couldn't afford $10,000, sort of thing. And then my husband actually invited 50 extra people without even considering the fact that the additional $4,000 might put stress on my parents. It did. Now in the video I also mentioned that I had a very complicated, like, that schools needed to be opened, and that I wasn't sure. I had been homeless. My life had been threatened. I called my mother and her husband out on her racism. I caught them. I called them out. As opposed to having a conversation about it, she attacked me and claimed that it was all my fault. And that I was wrong, that I had a lot of stuff going on, that it was my mental health, like, that it was all me, and that I was wrong. And it's just like, no. So I was all over the place when I did that. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought there. But let me see if I can get back to. Anyway, I totally lost my train of thought there. I'm so sorry. The finances. So yeah, my personal finances specifically, basically, my first marriage, I ended and took the hit. I had $150,000 in debt, at minimum $70,000 of which was because of my ex-husband, my first husband. I did not receive any alimony. I ended up leaving where I had a career and a life and moved back to the United States that was having a massive recession, and it took me 4 years to get my career back on track, at which point then I had moved for my second husband. When I decided not to get into hair, because it takes a while to build a book, and my ex was kind of like wanting me to make money right away, and it was very uncomfortable to him that I had like a month gap in employment. So I accepted a job to I worked as an internet sales and leasing consultant at a car dealership. Not the, like, I'm not big into sales, but I really enjoyed that job. I feel really bad because I was not, there were some, I think we needed like an HR meeting, but no, I really did enjoy that job. I liked the people that I worked with. There were definitely some issues that needed HR attention, but aside from that, like, no, I really liked that job. It was simply that I ended up becoming physically disabled while working, and the doctor who I had been seeing at the time, his office required visits every 2 weeks, regardless of, so every 2 weeks my work was receiving these notices saying that I would be back in 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks later I was not back. They would just get another notice saying I would be back in 2 weeks, and it made them really upset because they didn't know when I was coming back, and the doctor refused to write me out for a 3-month period to a month period, a month at a time would have been fine, or but 2 weeks and basically the doctor was like, no, let's get you on disability. Okay, until you figure stuff out, let's get you on disability. So I told my employer, I'm like, no, he's gonna try to put me on disability, and but then we're still doing this, and he's just like, I actually had an unemployment hearing regarding this, and the issue that they filed with unemployment was that the doctor, they thought I would be back every 2 weeks, and that was, so I lost my job, and then that's when I ended up doing real estate. I considered going back to school and taking online courses, but my second husband was like, no, the time for school is over, you work now. So I don't remember where I was going with this. See, now I'm losing track of stuff. I'm very sorry. So let me get back on track. So the video, basically, so the financial reasons. The second marriage, fleeing while in debt, which he should have been continuing to pay my bills. The job that I had accepted at that point in time was only paying about 50% of my bills because it was a part-time job at $12 an hour, and my PTSD and what I was going through was so bad at that point I could barely function in the office. It wasn't until I separated that I finally was getting in a better headspace, They did eventually want to offer me a full-time job, but the commute was just too much at that point. I should have sat and talked with them. Again, there were some HR issues, and I do sincerely apologize, but I should have sat and talked with them and figured out what they wanted to offer me, if anything. But again, the commute was just, it was bad. Anyway, so that was what I meant with my finances, and with the estate stuff that I thought I was going to be receiving this inheritance that I didn't. That was what I meant by my financial issues. That was it, and I didn't want to project that onto anyone. I didn't want to pull that in, anybody into that. And I think I said it was uncommon financial issues. In 2020, 2019, this is women not receiving alimony is quite uncommon. Not having not having familial support to pursue legal course of action that I am entitled to, it's not common. So that's what I meant. So I apologize if I confused anyone. There are also some other things I think I went over. I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, I had said something about how people with privilege shouldn't exist, and it's the responsibility of those with privilege to, break down privilege. What I meant by that was I had the privilege of being able to choose where I attended school. And one of the things was the video I sometimes I recognize that my tone and inflection on certain things wasn't what it should have been, and that's how I know I was impacted by the abduction and then unfortunate murder of that child, who I will not name her. She deserves peace and respect, and I don't want to talk about that right now, but that was my privilege was that I had the opportunity to choose the school that I attended. And even in the video I said I was grateful. I am very thankful for that school. I would not be but I was not at all prepared for attending. I wanted to attend college at one point. I was not prepared. I was not prepared for anything outside of cosmetology school, and then the high school that everybody went to, they took accounting. They took all of these, had all these courses. I didn't have that. I had, my senior year, they gave me essentially a second grade math book, because they had run out of stuff to teach me. And for previous years, I had, essentially, a lot of the classes, I would just sit in the corner and read, or take a nap. It was a very therapeutic environment, and I'm so thankful, and I'm so thankful for everybody that I met there, and I much love to them. Everybody, there were other issues that I was not involved with that other students dealt with that I cannot speak on, because it is those people who need to, if they choose to be vocal. And that was another thing, was I had suggested people share their stories, and that's because I know that I come from a place that's different to other individuals, and I don't ever want to speak, overstep or overspeak on behalf of someone that I don't have any context to speak on. So I do apologize if there was some confusion regarding that. I had at one point in 2018 actually accepted so in 2016 I think it was, I had seen my godson have an anxiety attack, and that was when I had this thought to start schools. And then in 2018 I ended up for a single day working in a charter school. I can't talk about that, but I chose not to return for reasons that it was that I felt it would be better, just based off of what happened. I felt it would be better for everyone if I just kind of stepped away. And if I were to be involved with schools, it would be from more of an administrative or a different level. But I just wanted to put something out to the universe, because there do need to be things and stuff. Now, after I ended up, so the owner of this house had promised me work. He knew now while I was homeless, I was very, for the 24-hour period I was on the website seeking arrangements. That was a massive mistake. I had been on the website to try and get out of it, not end up in this situation. It was a huge mistake. That is not, now if, I have nothing against people who choose to sugar. That's just not me. And I had looked into that because someone had suggested it for me, because that was her and how she helped herself at one point. That is not for me. I had briefly mentioned something at work, in passing. I don't think I had told them that I recognized that was not for me. Now, when I was when I was finally, like, he lured me with work, basically. Like, the guy, he even lowered the rent and the security deposit and stuff to get me into the, like, he lured me here. He lured me here. I had enough money to either get an extended stay hotel for a month and then end up renting a car to Lyft and getting a, like, as well as working and getting a roommate somewhere. Like, I had other options, but it was like, it was pushed to the point where you need to either tell me, like, what is going on. And he promised me work prior to signing the lease, and then after signing the lease, he again promised me work, and, like, refused to give me, I told him I would need work, and then just refused to give me work, almost like he was intentionally trying to put me on the streets and keep me as impoverished as possible. To the point where now, after I moved into this house, all of a sudden I was being stalked by people outside of the house. I was being stalked online. Weird stuff was going on at work. There were a lot of things that were going on that I can't get into right now because of what they were. But I did send some very strange messages that may have occurred because of the fact that I had a whistleblower case against my former employers that all occurred at the same time. What was the whistleblower case? So I had been working at a court reporting agency as a transcript production manager. And as the transcript production manager, I wasn't properly trained, at least initially. And like, one of the things I was instructed to do if we didn't have a reporter's signature on file was to squiggle signatures and sign for the reporters. Now, in some cases it's acceptable, but there was no indication that it was per procuratorium, and we did not have any information on file from the reporters that they would allow this. We did reach out to reporters to try and get signatures. No, very few people responded. Eventually they did respond after a while, but, like, it took a few times of asking. Anyway, there was that. There was issues with payment processing. The office manager would accept all of the checks that would come in, would be, as opposed to searching through the system, posting them in the system, and then depositing them, they would be deposited first and then posted second. And what would happen would be that checks would come in duplicate checks would come in from insurance companies. And as opposed to seeing whether or not this was a duplicate payment, it would just go directly into the bank. And then, as opposed to refunding the check, she would just assign it to a different case, even if the law firm, it wasn't that insurance company for that client. She would just apply it to that same law firm. Which some of the court reporters being used didn't have the proper certifications in the regions that they were sent to. There was one court reporter who flat out lied about certain things, would refuse to hand in her work on time, they had a 10-day guarantee. You can't advertise a guarantee and then not follow through with it. That is false advertising. At one point, I had on multiple occasions tried to bring up this reporter with them, the issues that we were having with her, and the response that I got was that maybe she had a sugar daddy. And it was just like, what the fuck? That's not an excuse to have. You don't excuse someone handing in court transcripts after they are due to the judge by saying she must be sugaring. What in the fuck? There are other issues. I went to report them to the Superior Courts of New Jersey in January 2020. I was in the building for 45 minutes. No one could figure out where to send me, what to talk to. I went back to work. I spent $100 taking Lyft to and from to try and file this. And I immediately put in my 2 weeks. They tried to convince me to stay longer. I initially agreed, and then things started getting so strange at the office that I they had to leave. It was not safe anymore. Like, they knew, and it's quite possibly because the office manager is friends with all the cops, and one of the court reporters' husbands is a state trooper. I don't know, but like, no, it was like there are laws set in place to protect whistleblowers. There are laws set in place to protect people, and it is absolutely not fair that people we did primarily. Sorry, that got too large. But we did primarily workers' compensation cases, but also had taken some cases involving federal cases. Now, it is not fair to the individuals whose cases they are, because they don't have any control over the court reporters. And at one point, like, one of my coworkers was like, she's crazy. Like, no, like, there are laws. She's your employee. Like, what is going on in her life? And I kept trying to bring this up, and I was just kept being dismissed. We need her. Like, maybe she's a day drinker. Like, no, if she's day drinking while she's working, and attorneys are calling, complaining, saying that this is not what happened in the deposition, we need the audio. Oh, I didn't record it. Like, what do you mean? Like, you're just making shit up? Like, and that's what it got to the point. And this is not okay. That the people, if you don't have a choice, and you're getting someone who's just like flat out like, I have a text messages from her flat out lying about New Jersey and New York Superior Court cases, claiming that in New Jersey you don't attach exhibits and you don't mark the transcript as exhibits retained by counsel. That is not true. If a transcript is not marked exhibits retained by counsel and there are no exhibits attached to the transcript, when someone's going through the transcript and there's an exhibit mentioned, you have to go back and reference it. What are they supposed to do? Especially if the attorney says, well, I gave them to the court reporter. No, they didn't. They're retained by counsel. Well, why didn't you write it in the transcript? Well, New Jersey it's not required. Like, no, that is a lie. And then I was instructed to charge that woman's husband's firm almost double what other court reporting, like what other law firms were being charged. Like, all of this shit. And so I left. I had another job. Like, it was just very strange. Like, my employer's like, pulled me in as a concerned mother. You won't find a less stressful job. First off, you're not my mother. Secondly, I don't think you know what this job is. It is very stressful. Like, I left. I had to, it got to the point where, like, there were things going on that I can't discuss in this video, but I left. And then there were people stalking me on my Instagram. This may have to do with the fact that my brother has a cybersecurity company and it was right before the election. I don't know. But there were people stalking me on Instagram to the point where I actually had to remove all of my followers, because even my landlord's brother had started going through and like friending people. And one of the people he friended happened to be my ex-husband's former tenant, who had been friends with me at one point in time, but is no longer my friend, she had reached out to my mom for reasons that she first off did not know my mother threatened my life. Secondly, she reached out to her for reasons I don't know. And my mom even said, did this person get hacked? Because it was such a strange interaction. And that same person then like made fake Instagram pages pretending to be me. Like, all of this stuff was going on. And it's like, I had started to, now I moved into this house and it was like every time I was on my medical cannabis, all of a sudden I was having an allergic reaction I had never had before. It might have been related to the stroke, I don't know. Because once I moved into this house, I'd say it was from November until April, I ended up having a headache that was like a suction cup at the top of my skull. It was not excruciating, except for occasions where it felt like something was moving around in circles inside my head. And I went for an MRI with contrast, and it did show bilateral hyperintense punctate foci. It was suggestive of migraine squalia. But they really weren't sure. But it did show up on the MRI, and I'm thankful for that. But like, I was having issues communicating, and I started it was almost like I was being forced to divulge all of this information and stuff that I would not have normally talked about. Like, something like pulling all of this information out of me, and to the point of automatic handwriting. And there was one point, like, this house is very haunted. I don't know what the fuck was going on, but there was one point, like, I was in the house, and it was like something from behind pushed me to the ground and forced me on my knees and started screaming at me to accept Christ. And it was fucking terrifying. Like, all of this stuff was, like, there was one point, I remember being very still, and then all of a sudden it felt like someone was marionette. Like, my arms started moving like this, like, without my control. Like I was being puppeted. It was fucking terrifying. But I started asking people for help, trying to explain the situation, and that it was not safe to call the police because the police were being used to hold me hostage in the house. And unfortunately, while I was on my medication, I had a very hard time communicating. There were other things going on that I can't discuss right now, that I can't disclose, unfortunately, just due to the nature of what they were. But it got to the point where, I can't, I want to talk about them. I can't. And the reason why I can't, it has to do with, essentially, is a massive lawsuit. And I may have been fucked with intentionally to try and push me past statutes of limitations. And basically, as an intuitive person, my guides kept telling me that it was essentially being done to discredit me. Like, discredit me from what? The only other thing it would be the, I had been a witness in a case the FBI chose not to prosecute, which was involved in the estate, but they chose not to prosecute it, so there was really no point, like, or if it happened because of the fact that I had the whistleblower case against my former employers. I don't know, but it was almost like I was being forced to, all this stuff started coming out, and I recognized that I had a laptop that I shouldn't have had, that my first husband might have actually watched child porn on. And I asked a former military member for help, and started explaining, like, he had, prior to my meeting him, been hanging out with 13 and 14-year-old children, and I gave her the name of one of the people, and all of a sudden she was just, like, started telling me to go fuck myself. And I had posted on my Instagram that I was documenting evidence because someone was trying to kill me, which was very much true, and it was like all of a sudden all of these people started attacking me and telling me to go fuck myself. And then at one point, someone was like, Again, I cannot get into the reason why I know why I was posting things. It's very important to discuss why I was posting things the way I was posting things. It was an intuitive reason, and since that point in time, a lot of what I posted has actually come true. I can prove a lot of what was going on, and I'm very thankful for that. But right now I can't really talk about it. But at one point I had been trying to launch a tarot card reading business. It morphed into something else. During this period while I was here, at one point, one of that person's friends started attacking me, telling me that there was a large group of people trying to help me, and my cards must be lying to me. Like, what large group of people? What are you talking about? And I started blocking these people, and then I would, like, post stuff, and then they would just start attacking me. Like, how do you even know I'm like, you're blocked. What is going on? Anyway, like, one of the person whose house that I was staying at, her fiance's house I was staying at, once I moved, essentially, like, I could not afford to attend her wedding. And my yes turned to a no. And I told her that. And, she, like, lost her mind because she chose not to respond to me. And then started saying she lost her best friend. Dude, I'm sorry I didn't tell you that I had a whistleblower case. I'm sorry I didn't tell you that I couldn't afford your wedding. I'm sorry I didn't tell you my dad was in the hospital in Italy. I'm sorry I didn't tell you all this stuff was going on. But I told your fiance that I was concerned that my staying at his house would contribute to the stress in your relationship that you were already experiencing because you forgot you agreed to, or the 15th. And I thought it would be healthier for everyone if I just didn't go to the wedding, on top of not being able to afford it. Well, she just started attacking me. And at one point, her friend, who I only probably spent a total of 10 hours with in my entire life, said, "What happened to the sweet girl that I attended high school with? We were so concerned you were going to harm yourself." First off, we did not go to high school together. I met you through someone else. We did not attend high school together. Secondly, at no point in time have I ever been self-harming. What is going on? Now, after I moved into this house, the former childhood friend whose mother's house I stayed at, whose story I shared that I should not have bothered because she and I have not been friends since 2004, we've just kept in touch. She came and visited, and started telling me, she asked me, first off, she equated her anti-racism to fucking the only black guy in town, Black Rob. I'm sorry, you are not anti-racist because you fucked somebody. That's not how it works. Then she asked me about my relationship with my ex. I tried to explain a little bit. I had told her I had an emotional affair. I did not. My husband got mad at me for making friends who were trying to help me get out of abuse. Would get mad at me for showing any emotion. That was it. He is the one who had an affair, or likely had an affair. Like, I did not. Her response, like, what I said, because I couldn't, like, again, I was terrified of her at this point. She was acting so strange. And I told her, she's like, "Well, you need to be punished for that." She's like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "Okay." So it was time for bed, and she, like, got offended that I slept in a separate room. Like, why do you think we're gonna sleep in the same room? Why would you think that? Like, she got offended that I was gonna sleep in a separate room. And then the next day, she asked me if I had, now, this is meant to be explanatory because I was very concerned for her mental well-being, and I had actually reached out to her sister, who just kind of dismissed me. But essentially, this individual is a bio mom for a child who has been adopted. And her child was adopted by a family who has allowed her to stay in this child's life as an aunt. Now, what she said to me was, she told me about how having a child was the best thing she ever did with her life. And I was just like, okay, that's great, but you do recognize that you're a bio mom as an aunt, and I know that's the best thing. Like, it was just like the attachment inflection there. It was a bit unhealthy. It was a bit of a red flag. And again, I'm not judging anyone who is, like, going through adoption. That is something that I do not have any experience of, that I cannot speak on because I don't know about. It is not my place. But it's just a bit of a red flag considering the other comments that were made and considering the comments that followed. She then asked me if I had ever thought about having children, and I said yes, but there's only one person I've considered having kids with, and her response was, "Well, you're never going to see him again." And I was like, I don't know what's going on, guys. And then she went through my house and started going through my stuff and telling me I really like this. Oh, I really like this. Like, she wanted my things. And then I showed her my, I had the boyfriend I had who commit suicide. I still have his childhood blanket. Unfortunately, I will gladly return it to his mom if she would like it, along with his driver's license, but I have cherished them for many years. Unfortunately, the washing machine in this house actually destroyed the blanket. It needs to be sewed up. But I had told, like, I have this, you better put it in a bag, like, almost like she was, like, it was very strange. And once she left, like, she told me she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, but then started explaining and showing the symptoms of schizophrenia. And then, like, all of this weird stuff started happening, and it was like she convinced my mom I had borderline personality disorder. I do not have borderline personality disorder. And what I experienced after moving into this house is not something I have ever experienced before in my life. It is like, and that absolutely needs to be. I've never before acted like that in my life, and I was like begging for people for help. And one of the things that people need to know about me, which only two other people know, two people know this, is that when I am in fear for my life, my self-defense mechanism is to make myself as big and as possible. Or to be very quiet and give people as many hints as to what's going on as possible. Like this time in Chicago, where I had been in an Uber that might have been a fake Uber. I don't know. There was some sketchy stuff going on, and I called my husband at the time, my second husband, and I asked him about his day. And then, in my responses, I'm like, well, we're on our way to this place right now. I just passed this place, and giving him all these clues. And at the end of the conversation, he's like, well, I just thought you were on drugs. At what point in knowing me have I ever done drugs, John? Not once. What the fuck? So he knew. The person I was with, she knew. She was not doing. She didn't understand the situation. Why I did what it upset her, and I do sincerely apologize. But I had explained that to her, and then another friend of mine, I had reached out to after it happened, and he's just like, no, dude, you were right. You were absolutely right. And if you were ever in that situation again, just send me a text and tell me that you're in an Uber, and I will call you, and we can have that. So, like, it was almost like, I don't know what was going on. I don't know what was going on. But I also don't know what my mother has been telling people for years and years about what my issues were growing up. It's important to understand that I not only dealt with abuse from her, but also people within the church. Now, I need to explain that I did, in fact, act out as very textbook, like, what I was going through. So I do apologize to the other people who were my age, what they went through with me. I do sincerely apologize, but had anyone actually recognized what was going on, I should have been removed out of my house. DYFUS needed to be involved. I had been trying to be emancipated. I actually started working at age 15 to try and move. But my mom doesn't believe in children having constitutional rights. At least she would tell that to me, and then kind of like laugh at me, like, no one would emancipate me. Like, what are you talking about? Like, no, like, I'm pretty sure I would have had a decent case at that point in time. But I remember being in Sunday school, and something had happened. There was a conversation, like my boyfriend at the time, he had been, I think he was in rehab at that point. And he had just tried to kill himself, his first suicide attempt. And someone said something that was very triggering, and I kind of like screamed, like spurted something out. And I recognized I need 5 minutes. I need to step outside. I need to smoke a cigarette, take a couple deep breaths, come back in and apologize. So I did that. The teacher followed me, cornered me, grabbed me, and shook me this close to my face for 10 minutes! I explained to my parents what happened. The response was, she just cares about you. Yeah, you're fine. That's not love. My dad even said the same thing when I tried to explain to him that my ex was raping me nearly every day. He would text me every 30 seconds. And like when I wasn't with him, every 30 seconds, what are you doing? Where are you? Who are you with? What are you doing? Where are you? Who are you with? Why are you not getting back to me on time? Where are you? Who are you with? Dad, I need help. I need to get out of this situation. No, sweetie, he just loves you. You're so lucky. He just loves you. I really want to know what my mom what my mom has been telling people for years, what she was telling people as to why I was living with her, why someone thought that I didn't have a real job. I'd like to know what was going on. I'm sorry this video is so long. But no, it does need to be understood that now, I don't know what else has been going on, but this did in fact start out as a human trafficking situation. And it was, again, it got to the point where I had a job. I had a job after I left the court reporting agency. I had a job. But it was COVID, and COVID just started, and it was just I'm sorry, I can't pay, I'm with everybody else right now. And he just started, get a job, and just started, I'm like, I can't leave the house. You keep sending people to the house without telling me in advance and claiming I don't have legal tenant rights that I have because I have, no, there are habitability issues that you need to fix. He didn't fix stuff for a year. And then he's like, well, you're not going to pay me. Why should I fix it? I'm like, that's not how the law works. And he expected me to fix the house when I moved in, and then got mad at me because I wasn't, and trying to get him to do his job. I could not leave, he was intentionally trying to force me into poverty. And he himself actually, at one point in time, made references to the video I made about schools. Now, it needs to be noted that in that video about schools, I disclosed two things. I disclosed the rape threat, which I had not talked about, and I disclosed another student at the alternative school who wanted to, at one point in time, kill me because I didn't want to date him. Now, that was never reported to the police. In fact, that was handled by the school, just kind of swept it under the rug, and my parents just, didn't even, they assumed things would be taken care of by the school. They were not. That was not ever addressed. He referenced the video, he knew, he made assumption. I'm sorry whatever happened to you in childhood, but I'm very sorry, sir, but you can't take your shit out on me because you don't, that's not how it works, sir. There had been, I'm not going to get into that right now. But no, it was legitimately he's trying to force me onto the street by not allowing me to leave the house, and then basically shaming me into I should be grateful he let me have this property. No, sir, I kept telling you to take the other potential tenant. I kept saying, you will make more money. Take them, let me know for sure so I can make the best decision for me. No, the house is yours. He told me initially $1,000 a month. I told him I spent $500 a month on my medication, and he raised it to $1,300. And I was like, okay, I guess I can do that. Well, I have another guy who's interested in the house, but he can't move it into November, or until October. It was a 2-week difference between when I could move in and this is, you will make more money with this other guy than with, it was trafficking. I did not feel safe to leave this house until it became an eviction situation because of what was going on. Anyway, I'm going to stop right now because this is 3.5 hours, and I don't know. But I appreciate, and I want to say, my brother, he might have sided with my mom because he's completely detached from reality. I don't know. He might not be. I have not spoken with him. I actually had told him not to contact me because of what was going on. Because basically, I had been explaining to him what was going on with the racism, with my health, with everything. And his response was just Mom, just ignore it. No, dude, I don't think you understand reality. And it is just he and I did not spend any time together as children. He knows nothing about my health. All he knows is that I got therapy as a child. He does not know that those sessions were primarily me sitting curled up in a ball, saying, I don't know, 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 in a near blackout state, while my mom and dad would scream at me for 45 minutes to an hour in front of a therapist, thinking that, like, that's what therapy was. And I'd just be, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, for fucking an hour. And then, like, when they weren't there, I would just sit there. The therapist, who was a man who didn't listen to me at all, would just, like, continue, and I would just kind of sit there and, like, completely detach. And that was my therapy. Basically, my parents used therapy as an excuse to abuse me, whether or not they believe it. That is the fact. And eventually, so I left him and I started seeing another therapist, and I really liked her. I saw her for many years, and then when I moved back from Toronto, and I went through a lot of stuff with my cancer and my dad moving to New Mexico and all this stuff, I started seeing her again, and she actually at one point broke down in tears because she finally, like, recognized what had happened to me in childhood, and she apologized that she wasn't able to step in back then, because at the time it was not like, there's a situational issue that needs to be addressed. Let's address the situation that's causing the child to act out this way. At the time, the thought was, it's the child that's the problem. You need to, like, address the child. No, it was the situation. Like, if that makes sense. Yes, I had a lot of stuff, but there were other factors that were not ever discussed, that should have been, because it was almost like my parents forgot my childhood diagnoses, that led me to being in a pediatric neurology clinic, and, like, not even considering how that would impact my learning disabilities and everything else going on. And again, I did not learn, like, I knew about my early childhood doctor's visits because I remember them, specifically a lot of the tests, the audio-visual tests. I loved playing with blocks. Like, I remember that. It's just, like, they didn't tell me about it until I spent the week. My mom didn't tell me about it until I spent the week in the cardiac care unit in 2017. Like, why didn't you tell, when I developed daily migraines, why wasn't my pediatric, like, I should have spent the entirety of my youth in a children's hospital. Like, I had gotten so sick when I was age 8. I got bronchitis, pneumonia, and the chickenpox. I spent the first, I think it was 6 weeks of the second grade at home. The hospital had wanted to hospitalize me. My parents chose not to, and I think it had to do with the religion. I don't know. But they chose not to hospitalize me, and I spent the first 6 weeks at home. I should have been in a hospital. I should have spent my childhood. Now, it wasn't until 2016 or 2017 that my mom disclosed to me that she spent the majority of her childhood in and out of hospitals, and when she was 14, ended up being diagnosed with the opposite of leukemia, which, by the way, is one of the rarest fucking blood cancers known. And then when I said, why didn't you tell this to me before? No, it's not relevant to you! Why should I tell you? Like, holy shit, Mom! So, anyway, I'm gonna stop now. I appreciate your time. This has been like 3 hours. I need to go take my dog on a really nice long walk because it's beautiful outside, and my kids deserve the absolute best, and I'm absolutely terrified because of how long things have gone unaddressed, and that the fact that for whatever reason people don't believe me, and it's quite possibly because of my mother, and because of how much involvement she has, and because people felt bad for her. Like, I legitimately have an email for her where I outlined all of the things she has done that are either illegal or preventing, like, obstruction of justice, all of this stuff that she has, the stalking, harassment, trespassing, involving other people in stalking, harassment, and trespassing. And her response to that was preventing the report of a rape. Like, and her response was, I'm just more concerned my feelings are hurt. You are more concerned your feelings are hurt than that you prevented crimes from being reported and taken seriously. That is narcissistic personality disorder. thank you for your time. If you've made it this far into the video, I truly appreciate you. If anyone can help, I'm going to put my contact info in the box here, as well as link to other videos. Now, I want to let you know that I did at one point, I'll link to the video about schools. Just please bear in mind that that was not ever supposed to be a video. I had been absolutely terrified at that point that I would remain homeless, and I had wanted to, or that I would die because my mom had threatened me and then was stalking me and all this stuff. Like, my brother started stalking me on Instagram, and I don't know why. I had been terrified. And so I just had this intuitive, like, I need to make this video, and it needs to be known that, sorry, I was just picking my nails and now I'm bleeding. It needs to be known that the video, it was not meant to start schools. It was my realization that, like, the message I had sent to Emily saying I was going to use my mental illness to start schools, that's not what the video was. It was my realization that I was homeless, and for whatever reason, people were suddenly starting attacking me, and it was almost like they were starting attacking me because I did not accept alimony. And it's like the most fucked up thing. That, and the majority of people have not ever been married before, and I've been married twice. Like, it's almost like they forgot we're in our 30s. Like, I'm gonna be 40 in 4 years, 3.5 years. Like, they forgot we're in our 30s, and we're dealing with 70-year-olds who are showing signs of dementia. Like, my mom had at one point signed herself up for a brain study clinic because she was concerned about her memory loss, and then was denied because her cholesterol was too high, but then didn't take any steps to fix her cholesterol, would just instead say, like, you know I have memory issues. Like, no, you are intentionally not taking care of yourself. Also, her memory issues are repressed trauma related. Primarily, at least to the best of my knowledge, because at one point she woke up in the middle, woke up in the morning and, like, her face was sunken in. And I remember her looking, I have a photo of it. She'd contacted her doctor. Her doctor said pockets of fat can sometimes do that. But she looked at me, and all of a sudden she, like, became this small child. Just like, I thought that's where my dad had punched me in the face when I was 12. And I talked to my parents were married for 27 years before they divorced. And my father had not once heard any stories of physical abuse. So, like, she has repressed so much. Anyway, also, people need to understand that she is not since she met her husband, she is not the same person she was before she met her husband. And I mean, like, she is a very different person, and that needs to be known. Anyway, thank you for your time. I apologize. It is so long, but I appreciate you greatly. If you can help, I would appreciate your assistance. If not, that's okay. I'm terrified. I've been very thankful that I have been safe. I've been very, very thankful. Very, very thankful. It's been very frustrating that I haven't, I had been renting a car to drive for Lyft and Uber, and right now I'm at a point where the last car I was in was not safe, and based off of the interactions with the owner, I did not, it was not a good situation, and he is refusing to return the car in the app I was renting from, which is preventing me from renting another vehicle, which is preventing me from getting out of this situation. And the majority of housing assistance programs require you to have steady and stable income. The majority of my income had been going to some court costs associated with a small claims case I had against my former tenant. The judge actually ruled in the opposite of the law. He claims that New Jersey was not a withhold rent and not a repair and deduct state. That is factually incorrect. New Jersey is, in fact, a withhold rent and a repair and deduct state. So I had taken it to appeals. Unfortunately, I kept explaining, my PTSD had been so bad I can, barely Um, anyway, yeah. So, um, like, it's very, like, there are supposed to be laws, and the entire legal system, like, this is so important. It is so important. It is so important. Anyway, thank you